Good morning and welcome to the Geeky Pastimes Daily Podcast. I don't know why I struggled to say that today. I was trying to work out what word to say next on the 12th of June 2023. And this will probably, I would say, probably be one of the most positive podcasts I ever do. Just because yesterday I watched the Xbox showcase and I was like, this sounds really lame. Like, this sounds really cringy, but I was a bit overwhelmed. Like, I actually felt overwhelmed with how good that showcase was yesterday. I'm going to mess around with the camera a little bit for the lovely people who are here watching it on youtube.com/Geeky Pastimes, just so my face is more in the frame. But yeah, that was just an incredible showcase. So for anyone who doesn't know, yesterday there was the Xbox Game Showcase as part of this whole Naughty Free season. Sorry if you can hear dogs barking outside. I'm not shutting the windows because it is so unbelievably warm. It's so hot. It was the Xbox Showcase. It was the PC Gaming Showcase. We had Summer Games Fest at the end of last week. We've already had the PlayStation Showcase. We've got the Ubisoft Showcase is happening tonight, as well as a Capcom Showcase, I think. It's that kind of season. And I would say, like I was talking about on Friday, normally I don't live stream these things. Like, I don't bother streaming any of these showcases. And the reason is that I have done that in the past. I think I did one or two of them last year. And I'm pretty negative about them, even though, like, generally, you know, I like hype, I like looking at the bright side, I like being excited about games. I usually end up finding these showcases a little bit boring. Like, I think it's a combination of I get myself too hyped up, you know, thinking of the things that could be. Some stuff gets spoiled with leaks, so that's not surprising when it gets launched. And then normally there's a bunch of games where we don't see like any gameplay, or it's games that we already knew about, and it's just kind of the trailers aren't doing anything for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not saying the Xbox Showcase was perfect. I'm not saying it got everything exactly right. I'm sure for some people there weren't the games that they wanted to see. There was some games where, even though they said, oh, every game's going to have gameplay and stuff, they were pushing that a little bit. Some of those games were in-engine cutscenes, like some of the trailers very much were like cutscenes. And yes, loads of the games were for next year and rather than for this year. But that aside, it was amazing. Just like, I can't remember the last time I watched a showcase, but I was interested in every single game that they showed off. It was incredible. There was a bunch of gameplay for the games that mattered. There was some incredible games I'm super excited about that are coming out this year and coming out soon. It was like the games that I already want to get, it showed me something new about them, or it showed me something that kind of got me even more excited about them. And then the games that I maybe didn't know about all looked pretty good to me. At least pretty good. You know, there's a couple of games where it's like, yeah, I might play that. And one of the wonderful things about Xbox is nearly all of the games where I was like, yeah, maybe I'll play that, were on Game Pass. So it's like, yeah, I probably will play that because it's on Game Pass. I'm not going to have to pay any money for it. So that's just amazing. I know I pay money for Game Pass, but you know what I mean. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. We're going to start off talking about the PC Gaming Show because there's a few little gems in there and I don't want them to get kind of lost in the sauce, as it were. Don't forget to like the stream if you are watching this. You can watch this live on youtube.com/Geeky Pastimes. I record at 9 a.m. every weekday morning. And then I also put up the audio version of it on all of the normal podcast services. If you want to support these podcasts, if you want them to keep going indefinitely, one of the best ways you can do that is by becoming a member here on YouTube. You can become a member from as little as $1.99 a month. You know, think you get like about 20 podcasts a month. For $1.99, that's 10 pence per podcast. Pretty good going. A little bit less than 10 pence per podcast. But yeah, that really supports me. That helps me keep this going. So let's get started with game impressions. We're going to go through the games that I liked of the PC Gaming Show, like some of the ones, all the ones that I thought were interesting at least. And then with the Xbox Show, we're going to talk about every single game. So this might go on for bloody ever. Buckle up. It'll be really cool. Just before we get going, welcome to everyone who's in chat. El Diablo saying, would I consider a watch party Ubisoft Forward? I don't think so, just because I like watching these with my wife. My wife's like into these gaming shows as well, and it's kind of nice sitting on a sofa and watching them together. And like I said, I'm always a bit wary that a lot of the time with game showcases, I'm quite negative. Like I sit there being like, oh, I'm bored. Like, oh, I don't care about this game. Especially if they have lots of interviews and things like that. So it's like the Xbox Showcase, I'm really happy I enjoyed. But I don't want to like, you know, like if someone else is hyped about it, I don't want to be streaming and being like, you know, spoiling their excitement, if you see what I mean, by putting a dampener on it. So that is why I probably will not be doing a watch party for the Ubisoft one tonight. but I will be watching it for sure. And then we'll talk about it on the podcast here tomorrow. Right, PC Gaming Show. Oh, no, before the PC Gaming Show, one little bit of gaming news I just thought was kind of important. There's a Final Fantasy 16 demo out today. Apparently, it's like 2 hours of the prologue. And then you get some battle sequence that's like from later in the game. There was like a Final Fantasy 16 launch event yesterday, even though the game's not out for a couple of weeks. But they had a launch event where they invited a load of creators out, and there they announced that there is a demo out today. So if you want to play the demo, you should download it and give it a go. Right, PC Gaming Showcase. There's a few games in here. There's like a few games that I was excited about. So I went into the PC Gaming Showcase, and I already knew some games that were being showed off because the companies had announced it. So I knew there was going to be Dune Awakening, I knew there was going to be Stormgate, and I knew there was going to be the Warhammer Age of Sigmar game. I was excited about those three. I would say Age of Sigmar I didn't end up liking the look of, and it's not that there's something wrong with the quality of that game. It's just that I had heard it was a Warhammer real-time strategy game. And when I think real-time strategy, I think games like StarCraft, Command & Conquer, Total Annihilation, like those sort of base builder ones. But Age of Sigmar turns out to be a bit more like the Company of Heroes style, where it's like you get a set of units and then there's a map with different areas, and it's really about controlling the different areas on the map, less about building a base or anything like that. So I'm just not that much into that, so I won't be talking about that too much. But then there were a couple of games I'd never heard of that looked super exciting. The first one was Exo Rally Championship. This is made by the people who made Exo 1. I'm not sure how many of you played Exo 1. It is a game where basically you control a little flying saucer that kind of skips over alien landscapes. And it's hard to, explain why that's good, but it's like one of the most satisfying feeling games I've ever played. So you're literally just controlling, you can go left and right a little bit, you can go up and down, and you're trying to sort of keep momentum, keep skipping across stuff. You start off with very simple landscapes, and it's just sort of working out how you can get this thing to go faster and faster. And then you start with slightly more complex landscapes, and you start, using the terrain to keep yourself going fast. It's a super satisfying game. It's got a super high rating on Steam. People loved it. It came out 2 years ago. And yeah, I think on Google it says 94% of people like this game with 3,400 reviews. It is a super, super fun game. Exo 1, well worth playing. I think it's out on consoles and stuff as well. I think so. I don't know that for sure. I might be lying, but I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, on Steam, it's on very positive. It's a really cool game. Anyway, the people who made that are making a game called Exo Rally Championship. And this is a game where you drive a little buggy on alien planets in a rally. So it's that kind of point-to-point rally, where you have markers you have to get to, and you have a time limit, and you're just trying to hit the markers as fast as you possibly can while driving a buggy. And the trailer was absolutely awesome. It showed this buggy, because a lot of these planets have low gravity, when you're in the air, it has loads of RCS thrusters, those of you who play Kerbal Space Program, lots of little gas jets so you can sort of control its orientation while you're in the air, which looked really, really cool. It looked very much how you would expect something like this to look in real life, if you get what I mean. Exo 1 was very abstract, where you're controlling a flying saucer. The car looks like a very physical object within the world, and it kind of makes sense how it would control. You've got jets of gas coming off all over the place to try and steady yourself. And you'll have the situation where you'll be driving and you'll see the first checkpoint is on the top of the mountain, and there's no track as such. It's just you've got to work out the best route to get up that mountain. So, how can you conserve your speed, conserve your momentum to try and get up there? But it looked like in the trailer at one point they came down off a mountain and lost one of their wheels. So it looks you've not just got to worry about speed, but you've got to worry about protecting your vehicle, and not taking too many hard hits or anything like that. That looks like the sort of game that I would absolutely love to play. I didn't see anything that indicated multiplayer or anything like that, but all it really needs is leaderboards. All it really needs is something like Trackmania has, where it's hey, this is the course that people are going to do today. Here's a leaderboard, go for it. I don't know whether that's how it's working. They didn't really talk about the structure of the game very much. But if it's something like that, I can easily see myself, hopping on it every day to try the new daily race, to try and get up higher on the leaderboards and stuff like that. I think it just looked like a really, really cool game. So Exo Rally Championship looks very, very cool. I know they have they have a Twitter page and things like that, I think, or at least the developers do. I just searched for it on there and it looks very cool. lots and lots of articles with the website. Oh, you can actually see it on Steam now. They have got it so you can wishlist it on there. It doesn't say when it's coming out or anything like that, but really, really cool. If you're into kind of, I would say, like space exploration games, or you're into time trial style racing games, both those things, you'll probably really, really enjoy this. Like, you'll probably have a really good time. Oh, and I just looked on a Steam page. It also says a couple of things. The planets and stages are procedurally generated, so it's like the sort of thing where you have to work it out on the fly. You're not just going to be learning the best route for each race. You're going to be like, work it out as you go. And there's a career mode where you have a deep management layer that allows you to customize, tune, and repair your rover. And then it says you can share seeds with your friends to generate the same stages and compete for the best time. So say if a load of us had it on the Discord, I could be playing it. I could like say, hey, this race was really cool. Share the seed on Discord. Everyone could have a go at it and post their times and stuff like that. Absolutely awesome. So Exo Rally Championship, check it out. Another game that I'm not going to talk about for as long was Stampede Racing. This looked like a very, very basic kart racer. Like when VR first came out and there was a bunch of kart racers that were like, it's like obviously riffing on Mario Kart, but they just didn't have the kind of charm and the sort of visual flair that something like that had. It looks like that. So, you'd be like, oh, not a big deal. But free to play, and there's 60 players in a race. That's amazing. Like 60 is such a huge number for a racing game. And those of you who have watched me for a while will know I absolutely loved Riders Republic, where they have the mass races with loads of people taking part. I used to really like F-Zero, F-Zero on the N64, where you had like 20 racers or something like that, was really, really cool. I just think there's a lot of fun to be had with racing games where there's a huge number of people taking part on the track. I think that's awesome. So yeah, I'm excited about this. It's just a kart racer that's free to play with 60 races on it. That's all you really need to know about it. It looks like it could be a lot of fun. And because it's free to play, sort of thing where I could imagine us doing it as like a community night, just being like, hey, everybody download this game and hop on it. I think that could be really, really cool. And then the next game that from the PC Gaming Showcase I wanted to talk about was Stormgate. So this is a game that I've been excited about for quite a while. It is made by a bunch of people who used to work at Blizzard on StarCraft and StarCraft 2. As far as I understand it, and I might have got this a little bit wrong, they worked at Blizzard. They wanted to make StarCraft 3, but Blizzard didn't make StarCraft 3. And at some point, they all left the company and they made their own company where they're making something that looks a lot like StarCraft. So it's kind of like if you're in StarCraft 2 and you're annoyed that there hasn't been a new game for a long while, this should probably be on your radar. And when you look at all of the marketing for it and everything, they are playing very heavily into that. So, they have a lot of ex-professional StarCraft players actually working on a development team, doing bits of the marketing for them and stuff like that. They're doing playtests with them. They obviously are wanting to chase that kind of competitive real-time strategy market, which, to be honest, there hasn't really been much of a change in it for a long while. StarCraft 2 is still, at least in my mind, the biggest game in there. I haven't really seen anything else take over. So yesterday, rather, at a PC Gaming Showcase, that was the first time that we've had like gameplay of it. Like we got to see a bit of gameplay. We didn't get to see something. I would have liked to have seen a whole game. Would have been really cool, but there's nothing like that. It looks super early. There's loads of placeholder graphics. It's got a sort of interesting visual style. It's very cartoony, but it doesn't look very kind of coherent yet. They only showed off one faction, so they only showed off like the humans. And the thing that struck me immediately watching it is like, oh, this is StarCraft. Like this, it looks so much like StarCraft. It's insane. To the point where I watched a breakdown by Loco, who's one of the content creators who I watch for StarCraft stuff. He's a really good commentator. And he was talking through it, and he was literally like, okay, so that unit is that kind of unit from StarCraft. That ability looks like that sort of ability from StarCraft. It was like every UI element, every unit, every mechanic, you could kind of see some analog to it in either StarCraft or Warcraft or other games that are similar to these kind of things. That's not to say it doesn't have ideas of its own. It definitely does. It definitely has a couple of little tweaks. Like there was a light forest that small units could get through, but big units couldn't. So that's obviously quite a big strategic difference. But I think if you like, it's the sort of game where if you like StarCraft, you might be interested in this. And if you don't like StarCraft, this isn't going to win you over. It definitely looked like a similar kind of thing. They did talk at the beginning about something I've cared about a lot, which is they were saying, oh, one of the problems with games like StarCraft is that it's not very accessible. If you're new to those kind of games, there's such a huge skill gap that it's, you know, impossible for you to compete really against anyone who knows what they're doing. And it's a similar thing that lots of games have struggled with lately. You know, we've talked a lot about it with Call of Duty and first-person shooters. That, you know, you look at something like Call of Duty, which is quite accessible, like most people can play Call of Duty, compared to something like Valorant or Counter-Strike, where it's like very hardcore, very high skill gap. And, you know, Call of Duty's been the successful one. The one that's easy to play is the successful one. And then you look at Street Fighter 6 that people have been loving, where it has a mode that you can use in ranked, where it automatically does combos and special moves for you. You just tap one button to do them. Like this kind of idea of taking genres that are traditionally quite difficult to play and making them as simple as possible, as accessible for as many people as possible, is a super good way of doing things. And they were talking about that with Stormgate. But then when they showed off the gameplay, they were definitely leaning into the hardcore thing. Like they were talking about early scouting and stuff like that. They were talking about controlling 2 armies at once in order to flank someone. It was immediately a little bit like, yeah, you're saying that you're going to make this more accessible, but that's not really what you're showing yet. So that was maybe a game where I was a little bit disappointed in what they've shown off so far. But I'm still going to keep on, you know, with their updates and everything. Then finally in the PC Gaming Showcase, the last thing they showed off was something I am very, very excited about, and I thought looked really good. And that was Dune Awakening. So if anyone who doesn't know, this is made by Funcom. It's made by the people who made things like Conan Exiles, and it is a survival game. If you've played Conan Exiles, that's like a survival game in the desert with an IP. This is that. You know, it's a survival game in the desert with an IP. But it's set in a Dune universe. So that means that, you know, the big resource that you're chasing after, the resources is like water and spice. You can steal water from other players' still suits and things like that. You can make different like alliances. You can make big groups. You can ride ornithopters. There's like sand bikes and tanks and stuff like that. There are sandworms, although they only showed those off in concept art. They made them look like appropriately insanely huge in the concept art, but they didn't have any gameplay of what they look like, which, you know, is a tiny bit of a red flag. It's like, oh, they're clearly not done with that yet. But the game itself, I thought looked really cool when they were just like exploring the world and stuff. And one thing I thought was a very cool idea, which I hadn't seen in a game like this, is that apparently there's going to be like, because these games, you know, are persistent. So the idea is that you're on a server and you build a base and stuff. And every time you log into it, while you've been offline, stuff will have happened in that world. Someone might have raided your base. Someone might have moved in next door. Whatever's happened. And so it's like this persistent online world. And they said that there's going to be weekly storms which shift the sands around. So it's like, you know, you come on the next week and suddenly, whereas previously next to you there was a massive sand dune, now that's exposed some old abandoned bunker or something that you can go into. Or on the other hand, maybe you set up your base next to a bunker where you were using it to get resources and stuff like that. And then now there's a massive sand dune in the way, so you can't do anything there. So you have to find somewhere else or maybe move your base. I thought that's a really cool idea, like keeping it interesting every week. I think it's a really solid idea. So that is Dune Awakening. That's, as far as I know, it's meant to be coming out in early access this year. I'll definitely be doing some more coverage of that. Like Funcom are normally pretty good, like they chat to me and stuff. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to see some more of that relatively soon, hopefully. Then, let's get on to the Xbox Game Showcase. We did pretty well, 20 minutes. That was pretty cool. So we've got 40 minutes to talk about the Xbox Game Showcase, and I want to talk about every game. I'm going to, for the benefit of people who are watching this on video, I'm going to play some of these trailers as we talk about the games. So if you are listening to this on podcast and think, hey, I want that experience, I want to be able to see the games that he's talking about, you can watch it on YouTube. If not, I'll try my best to describe things for you. So, the Xbox Showcase kicked off with this sign saying Playground Games Presents, which immediately, you know, it's like, oh, Fable. And then you've got Rich Ayoade talking. Rich Ayoade, for anyone who doesn't know, is a British comedian. He's famous for things like the IT Crowd. He did Travelling Man. He does a lot of panel shows and things like that. He's very funny, got a very sort of deadpan sense of humour. A very kind of British sense of humour, even though he's like Norwegian, Nigerian or something. He's got a very, very British sense of humour, very dry. And in it, it's really funny. He's talking about how, like, you know, oh, you get these stupid heroes and adventurers. I'm doing the real heroic work growing vegetables. And he's just talking about growing vegetables. It's very, very funny. It's like, it's a really cool style. Interestingly, the art style has like these cartoony elements like giant pumpkins. But then it also has a very kind of sort of more realistic style than Fable. Fable was very, very stylized. And I feel like this is a bit more hyper detailed. not realistic exactly, but like looking more like a live action version of fantasy rather than a super cartoony version of fantasy. But yeah, so it's like riffing on fairy tales, just like Fable always has. So, it's got the whole Jack and the Beanstalk thing. Someone's growing stuff, a big vine shoots up, and then you've got this big reveal that Richard Ayoade is actually a giant and the adventurer is like normal sized. And then it shows us a bit of what I assume is gameplay. They've said all of this is in engine, which just sounds bananas because it looks super good. And then you see a little bit of gameplay and I think it looks really solid. Like it's just basically the player running around this environment trying to get away from giant Richard Ayoade. It's really, really cool. And it looks really funny. It's got, like, oh, they nearly swear at the end. It's got that kind of vaguely innocent, like, winking at the camera kind of humor that I think is really awesome. So, obviously, it would have been nice to see a little bit of it would have been nice to see a little bit of gameplay of Fable that's like, normal gameplay. So, with the HUD and everything like that, someone exploring the world, give a better sense of what the game looks like. We really only got a couple of very fast snippets of someone running through an environment in what's probably, like a set piece. It's like, think of games like Uncharted. It's that kind of thing where it's like, okay, cool, you don't really have many options here. You are just running down a path to get away from this thing. And that's fine. The game looked super nice. The graphics are nice. And you wouldn't expect anything less from Playground. They make Forza Horizon, one of the best looking games on any console. But yeah, it does give me this feeling that Fable is a long way away. Like, this didn't seem like it's a game that is close to being done. But there is the kind of reminder, which there is on the end of a lot of these, that it's going to be day one of Game Pass. It's going to be something that you don't need to pay any extra for. So I was excited about the showcase. The showing for Fable. I thought it was really, really cool. But I can kind of understand, people being like, oh, I was hoping it was going to say releasing next year. Which it didn't. And a lot of other games it does say releasing next year. So this could be like a 2025 game. And it would have been nice if we saw a bit of like kind of normal gameplay. Because Microsoft did make a big deal of saying everything's going to have gameplay in it. And it's like, technically that did have gameplay, but that's not really what we're thinking. Flynn in chat is saying another 3 or 4 years, you'd say. That would be insane if it ends up taking that long. Bear in mind, like, this console generation's already been out for 3 years? Yeah, 2020 is when it came out, isn't it? I'd say another 3 or 4 years, we'll be looking at the next consoles. I genuinely think Fable's going to probably be early 2025. I think, like, we'll probably see it again next year at the Xbox Showcase, and there we'll see, an extended deep dive like what we saw for Starfield or something. And then I'd say either the end of 2024 or early 2025. I wouldn't be surprised if Fable was Xbox's big game for next year, maybe. Weirdly, after this, Matt Booty, who's like the one of the Xbox executives, was saying in an interview they want there to be like 4 big Xbox first-party games every year. And so it's kind of, it would maybe tie into that I think they're probably aiming at the end of 2024, but they're hesitant to say that it's definitely going to be there. There's obviously always the risk of things getting delayed and stuff like that. Anyway, that was Fable. I was excited about it. I think that was really cool. And then we went straight into this game from Compulsion Games, which this is a strange one. So this is, I've forgotten what it's called now. I've got the title somewhere. I need to look up the titles and do it that way. South of Midnight, that's it. So this was a trailer that looked very cool, but I would say I would be cautious about this game just because it's by the developers of We Happy Few. And anyone who followed the development of We Happy Few will know that game had an awesome art style, really cool introduction, and then the gameplay was just really bad. Like, the gameplay was just really, really boring. And it's like, this game, everything they've shown off about it looks awesome. The style is awesome. Hey, Mad Jock, thank you so much for becoming a supporter, for becoming a member on YouTube. Appreciate you very much. Yeah, this game, the style looks cool. It's really interesting, sort of vaguely Tom Waitsy style. Guitar player with like half his skull exposed. Another giant, strangely. Like, this is definitely Year of the Giants. And yeah, like, it shows the idea like this woman's coming up and then there's like a monster behind her, so there's going to be some combat. She's got this strange like sword lantern-y type thing behind her. It all looks very cool, but it's just like, We Happy Few looked cool and had a cool world and had cool enemies and everything like that, but the gameplay was super basic. So I really hope that like this is going to deliver on that front, that it's going to be more than just style, that there's going to be some substance behind it. But that South of Midnight, we didn't really, again, it was one of these in-engine things. We didn't see any gameplay or anything like that from it, so it's kind of hard to tell what that game exactly is. Like, I would assume a third-person sort of action-adventure, but yeah, hard to tell. Then the next game we got, and, you know, this was super exciting, just seeing the Ubisoft Massive logo pop up. Ubisoft Massive are the people who made The Division, and we know that they've been working on a Star Wars game, so this was insanely exciting. This is a game where, yes, it was essentially a CGI trailer, and Microsoft did say it was only their first-party games that were all going to have gameplay. But Ubisoft have already said that they are going to show off gameplay of this tonight at their showcase. So this was almost like a teaser for what they're going to show off tonight. And I would say, as Star Wars game trailers go, this was pretty amazing. It's set during the original trilogy kind of era. That's absolutely awesome. It's got this like cute little animal thing. There's some new ship designs in there and stuff like that, but there's also things that, you know, you're used to seeing, like Imperial shuttles and things like that. It's called Outlaws, by the way. I didn't actually talk about it. One of the weirdest things about this is that they've said all over the place in the marketing and all over Twitter, they've been like, oh, this is the first open world Star Wars game. And like, I don't know what you think, chat. I don't know what people who are listening thinks that. That sounds like that's definitely not true. Like, surely, I mean, it depends exactly how you define open world, I guess. But there's been a lot of open world Star Wars games, like a lot. Like, you think, there's been Star Wars Galaxies, there's been The Old Republic. Arguably, games like Jedi Survivor and Knights of the Old Republic have open world areas, or something, you know, like Battlefront and things like that, where they've got big open battlefields and things. It feels like there's been a lot of games that have at least open world elements. I mean, like The Old Republic, Star Wars The Old Republic and Star Wars Galaxies, I don't really see how you could get that much more open than it. I'm assuming it more means, you know, you think of the Ubisoft style of open world games. So things like Far Cry, things like Assassin's Creed. There hasn't really been a Star Wars game like that. Like, there hasn't really been like a Star Wars RPG where you're sort of, you know, leveling up your skills and things like that and going to do missions. Except, I mean, even then, Jedi Survivor is pretty close to it. So yeah, it's a weird marketing tool, but I thought this trailer was absolutely awesome. And a couple of things just to note about it that I think is really, really cool is that there is just an incredible amount of color in it. And this is something that I think applied to the whole showcase, that like every game they showed off was colorful. It was vibrant. It was like interesting to look at. And that's something that I don't think we've seen from the other showcases this year. You know, looking at the Summer Games Fest, looking at the PlayStation showcase, looking at even, you know, the PC gaming thing that came after this. There's a lot of very dreary games, and it's like every single game they're showing off, there's like bright splashes of color, there's really interesting worlds to look at, there's interesting characters. That's another thing, that if you think about the sort of like the 3 games that they've shown off at the beginning of this showcase, all of them, all sort of like, well, 2 of them were AAA games, one of them maybe AA, as it were. But big games, big things they're showing off, and no generic white gruff man as the protagonist. You know, like the characters are all interesting. The characters are all women, like the protagonists are all women, which I think is a nice thing in gaming, that it's something that should be encouraged, is having a little bit more of a diverse cast, and like different races, and just more interesting characters. Like when I was watching the Summer Games Fest, it just felt like there was so many like European medieval fantasy where there's like a man who looks a little bit gruff and angry, but he's probably got a heart of gold and he's got a big sword. And it was just like that over and over and over again. Whereas with this, it looks, at least with these games, it looks as if like they're trying to do something interesting. They're trying to have some interesting characters. So I'm excited about this. I thought this looked really cool. And like I said, when the trailer was ending, I was a little bit like, oh no, that kind of sucks that it was just pretty much, or it looked like a CGI trailer. I'm sure some of this is in engine, but generally, oh, and that guy looks like Nicolas Cage as well. Man, let's just rewind to that guy. I said this in the showcase. Now, looking back on it on a video, I'm more and more convinced that this could be Nicolas Cage playing this person. Man, here we go. And next shot, this guy turns around. Could that be Nicolas Cage? After seeing him in the Dead by Daylight thing, I'd love it if he's at a Star Wars thing. That would be very funny to me. But yeah, yeah, look at that world. Look how colourful that is. That looks just absolutely stunning. Which is something, yeah, that Star Wars, I think, benefits from, is having interesting planets, as well as having, you know, Star Destroyers and TIE Fighters and X-Wings, and I think there's a Y-Wing at some point goes past, and some new ships, all very, very cool. But yeah, I was watching it being like, oh, it's a bit disappointing, the CGI, but then they said, yeah, we're going to be showing more of this, and we're going to be showing gameplay of this tomorrow with the Ubisoft thing, which is actually today. Yeah, gameplay walkthrough reveal, so they're going to just play a bit of it at the Ubisoft Forwards tonight. Which I think the Ubisoft Forward's at 6 o'clock later, so not too late. I'm super excited about that. That got me excited for the Ubisoft Forward. I thought that was like the perfect way to showcase this. Ubisoft are often guilty of putting the same trailers in lots of different shows. You know, we've had Assassin's Creed Mirage at the Summer Games Fest one, I think, and maybe the PlayStation Showcase, and obviously that's going to be at Ubisoft Forward. It's nice to have something where it's like, hey, yeah, you've seen this kind of world-building announcement that this is Star Wars Outlaws, this is an open-world Star Wars game. Now, and you know what time period it's set in, you've got some idea of the main character, all of that stuff, but then you're going to get to see gameplay at the next showcase. That's the way to do it. I thought that got me super hyped. That game looks amazing, and Ubisoft Massive are an incredible development studio, so I am super excited to see some more of that. Right. Oh, I also need to just ban someone from the chat because they're an idiot. Yeah, hide user from this channel. The person won't know if they've been hidden, but see if you can guess if it's you. Right. So those 3 games, you know, Fable, South Midnight, Star Wars Outlaws. I also saw a thing someone was tweeting about, which is quite funny, when I was saying, in, what's this, 7 minutes and 50 seconds, Xbox managed to get more women on stage talking about games than Summer Game Fest did in their entire presentation, because Xbox has 1 woman. Summer Game Fest, it was all men talking about the games. You know, it was Jeff Keighley and then just interviewing men talking about the games. Just men on stage talking about it, showing trailers where the protagonists were almost entirely men. It was very kind of like, I don't know what the word is, kind of backwards for the gaming industry. And so it's nice to see someone, and you know, this isn't like, oh, it's a token woman, it's not just a presenter they've hired. It's actually like, you know, a Microsoft executive who's in charge of games at Xbox. So it's very, very nice to see a bit more kind of representation from, and not just token representation, you know what I mean? I think it's really cool. So we can skip through this though. Because we want to talk about the games. Oh, so the next one is this game from Thunder Lotus. Another world premiere. Now this is 33, I forgot my score, it's like 33 something. And this looked absolutely amazing. It's by the people who made Spiritfarer, which is a game that lots of people absolutely loved. My wife and her sister were obsessed with this game. It's very cool looking. It got like kind of Hades vibes, the look of the gameplay. So, you know, it's a top-down action. You've got different abilities. You're trying to avoid enemy attacks, you know, in kind of a bullet hell style. Looks like you'll probably be getting upgrades and stuff like that. But the big kind of twist for this, the big thing that makes it different, is that it's called, you know, it says, we're going to be doing raids. Oh, 33 Immortals, that's what it's called. And so you can play this in co-op. Oh, you can see some treasure chests there, so I'm guessing, oh, different people have different weapons and spells and stuff. You can play this in 33 player co-op. That's just incredible. Like, again, it's just one of those things where you're seeing gameplay of something, and at first I was like, yeah, it looks okay, and it's like, oh, I don't think I've ever seen a game that's done this. I don't think I've ever seen a game that looks like this. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, how does matchmaking work? Can you do a private game where you get like 33 people? You know, if some 2 Angry Gamers or someone runs a game of this, can we get 33 people who are all chatting in Discord and stuff like that to do it? There's been like a few games lately that have taken that kind of idea, like the Starship Troopers game, where that's got huge numbers of people working co-op together, and it's so much fun. Like, that is the thing that's fun about that game. 33 Immortals looks awesome, coming next year, coming to Game Pass. So many of these games coming to Game Pass. It's just insane. Surely they've got to put the price of Game Pass up. It's £11 a month at the moment, which you think across a year, even if you just buy it monthly, that's what, 12 times 11 is 110 plus 24, 134 pounds. That's like less than just buying Starfield and Forza. And then you're getting all of these other games straight away, which just, I don't know, seems absolutely incredible to me. Then we move on to Payday 3, another game that I didn't actually realize is coming to Game Pass day one. This is the first game that they've showed off that's coming out this year. It's coming out quite soon. It's in September, which is only a couple of months away. Very, very excited about this. Payday 1 and 2 were awesome games. I didn't keep up with all of the DLC, but I played them both a lot when they launched, playing them with my friends. Had a really good time of it. I've seen some people complaining about the graphics of this, and I think, and I might be wrong about this because we've just got this gameplay trailer to go on. We haven't had that much explanation. I think the idea is that they've spent a lot of time working on systems, and so the graphics look a little bit like plain, as in there's not lots of visual clutter and stuff like that. Much more to try and make it clear what you can do. And I'm going to break down this trailer a little bit more than I have the others, because I think there's some really cool stuff in this. First of all, there's this sentry gun that comes in a briefcase. Little nod to Perfect Dark there. Absolutely love it. And for anyone who doesn't know what Payday is, by the way, it's a 4-player co-op game where you go in to do different heists. So you'll get a little mission pop up on your screen saying like, hey, there's a bank job that you're doing, which looks like what's going on here. You will decide what loadout you're going to have based on using the money that you got from previous heists. You'll get your loadout together, you'll get your group of friends together, and then you'll head into this mission. And then generally the way Payday works is you go into it, and at the beginning, no one knows that you're doing anything wrong. So you've got a potential to gain some information, to stealth things, maybe sneak in, find a different way into the building. It's quite like open-ended in that way. Maybe you could sneak around back and find a employee who's on a little bit of a break. Thank you for becoming a supporter, Carter. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate that. You could maybe find an employee who's on a break and then knock them out quietly and take their employee key card, tie them up and hide them somewhere out of sight. And then that might let you sneak into the back door and then steal stuff without ever being seen, without ever setting any alarms off. Or what normally happens is at some point someone sees you, at some point someone notices what's going on, or an alarm gets tripped, and then waves of police start coming, and it turns into this crazy action game, like this crazy kind of wave-based shooter, which is super, super violent, like really over-the-top violent. Like these people, while robbing a bank, will murder like 120 people. But it's a fun gameplay loop, and you get different kinds of missions. So, sometimes it's robbing a bank, sometimes you'll be sneaking through a giant art gallery. Sometimes you'll be on a street robbing lots of little shops. Sometimes it'll be like armored vans on a highway that you've stopped and then you're like trying to do something with them. Sometimes it's like you're fighting other drug dealers and you're trying to steal their drugs and get away on a speedboat. There's like quite a lot of variety in Payday 1 and 2. But anyway, the things that look interesting about this trailer. So yeah, you've got this like turret thing that someone sets up. You've got obviously showing the insane amount of action, like this person firing a science pistol insanely fast and just people going flying. It's very like Hollywood action, it's super over the top, but in a very cool way. Thank you for the hype for the supporters as well. Yeah, like the more hype emotes we can get for supporters, the better. Hype up those supporters, encourage it. So yeah, and then you see some really cool stuff here. So if you just look, and I'm going to break this down quite slowly, look at the guy on the left, who's obviously one of the players because he's got a clown mask on, like running and sliding down. That looks very, very cool. Someone meleeing someone off the top of the building. And then I think there's someone in a second. So the guy, look at the guy coming from the background there. He throws some kind of grenade or flashbang. And then, oh no, it's not that bit. It'll cut back to it in a bit. There's something there. I don't know what that is, like thermite or something. And then, oh, there's people running through shields, people climbing through windows, people jumped out. There we go. This is the bit I was talking about. Someone like wall running to get to you. So an enemy, it looks like an enemy assassin or something. They've got like night vision goggles on, even though it's daytime. They've got like a wrist blade on, and they're like wall running on a couple of vending machines to try and come and attack you. Now it's like, are the players going to be able to do that as well? Is there going to be like some crazy movement skills? I get the impression that the environments have been made a little bit more simple maybe for stuff like this to be possible, for there to be some like cooler interactions with the scenery. And then you also see there, that thermite thing that we saw earlier has cut a hole in the floor. So that could be another reason why you've got a lot more like blank walls and blank floors. They could be a little bit like Rainbow Six Siege, where it gives you more options where you're like, hey, I can decide to cut a hole in the floor here. I can decide, if you've cased out a place properly and you think, okay, we can get on the roof, we can set this thermite thing off and go directly into the vault rather than, trying to unlock it or anything like that. Having more options would be absolutely awesome. So yeah, I'm really interested in this. It's coming out in September, so we're not going to have long to wait. It's on Game Pass, and it being on Game Pass is awesome because one of the problems with Payday has always been finding other people to play with. It's a game that is much, much better if you've got 3 or 4 people than if you're trying to play by yourself or even as a 2, just because you have a lot more options. You know, if you've got 4 people and you're trying to do a bank heist, you can have one person controlling all the civilians, one person trying to get into the vault, one person like looking at the cameras and stuff, maybe watching the roof, one person going around and trying to sort of like grab all of the money and stuff. You can kind of have different roles. And with Game Pass, that means people will just be able to play it. They don't need to buy it. They'll just be like, hey, yeah, I've got Game Pass, I'll hop on. If you don't have Game Pass this year and you have a PC or an Xbox, like, what are you doing? It's so good. So yeah, I'm really excited about Payday 3. And like I said, it's coming out in September, so not too long at all. You can see there's some like electrical things, lots of sliding around and stuff like that. I think it looks really good. I have heard people saying that they were disappointed with the way this looks. But it just looks like so much faster to me. It looks like there's a lot more options. It looks like the movement is a huge amount better. Yeah, I'm very, very excited to see where they go with it. Obviously, with games like this, there's always the vague worry that you might have, you know, like it's a perfect game for something like a Battle Pass or microtransactions. Hopefully, we won't get that. Hopefully, that won't happen. But it's coming September 21st, so not far away at all. Very excited about that. Play day one on Game Pass, like everything. Don't forget to like the stream if you haven't already. Really appreciate it. And you're welcome, Carter. Very, very much appreciate it. Thanks for coming by and checking out the podcast. Right. The next game is from Atlas. My wife is a massive Persona fan. I've never played a Persona game, but I've watched her play all the way through Persona 4 and Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. So it was exciting to see what they've got. This is what I was talking about at the beginning, where it's like, these are games that normally I wouldn't be that interested in, except for the fact they're on Game Pass, so it's like 100% will. This is the Persona 3 remake. It's a game that was originally on the PSP, just to give you an idea of what level of remake this is. You know, PSP games do not look good now, but they've obviously updated it a lot. They've got some visual bits of flair, kind of, you know, I would say maybe inspired by stuff that was really successful in Persona 5. It looks really, really cool. It looks like a fun game. I'll almost definitely give it a try just because it will be on Game Pass. I've heard Persona 3 is really good. It's called Reload. So yeah, excited about it. It's on Game Pass. That's what Game Pass is amazing for. Not just for getting really, really cool games, but also for getting games that maybe you wouldn't normally play to get you to give them a go. Then for the next game, we have this game, Avowed. So this is a game that I was super hyped about going in. And again, it's another one where I've seen some negativity online, you know, mostly on Reddit and stuff like that. It is a Obsidian RPG set in the Pillars of Eternity universe. So I get there's a lot of people that might be sitting there being like, the what in the what now? That doesn't make any sense. So Obsidian, the development studio, are a larger part of, you know, ZeniMax of Bethesda. And they are the team that worked on Fallout New Vegas, which was the best Fallout game. They also did Outer Worlds, not Outer Wilds, but Outer Worlds, which was that sort of space, slightly smaller first-person RPG. That was all right. It wasn't amazing, but it was all right. And then they also made the Pillars of Eternity. I think they made some of the old Pillars of Eternity RPGs. Now, Pillars of Eternity is a RPG universe where it's all set on kind of tropical islands. It's kind of a lot inspired by pirates, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean style, but in a fantasy universe. And they announced a few years ago, they showed off Avowed, and it basically looked like Skyrim. And people were like, oh, well, you know, Bethesda made Fallout 3, then Obsidian made Fallout New Vegas. Avowed is going to be like their take on Skyrim. And it showed, you know, going through a creepy dungeon, and it all looked very dark and gothy. Then they put this trailer out, and this trailer is super colorful. Like going back to being just like lots of colorful environments, lots of brights, like you see here, lots of really kind of bright, vibrant colors, which is much more fitting with the Pillars of Eternity universe. Like much more, this is kind of what you would expect. If you'd heard that this was a first-person RPG set in the Pillars of Eternity thing, and you knew what that was, this is kind of what you should be expecting. Obviously, a lot of people weren't. A lot of people wanted something a bit more serious, a bit more dour, a bit more like Skyrim. I'm guessing this will be a bit more like Outer Worlds. It'll be a slightly smaller RPG, something that is focused on, you know, really letting you explore this world, really letting you see how vibrant and how different it is. For me, that's super exciting. You know, I've said a million times, I really like colorful games. I really like interesting, unique, different games. I kind of don't want to play Skyrim again. I don't want to play something that I've already played, but a fancy game with something a bit different. And, you know, you've got a kick, reminds me of like Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. Having something a bit different, something a bit more exciting is right up my alley. So I'm really excited about this. It also looks like there's a big focus on kind of combat magic, which should be fun. But if you're familiar with games like Fallout and Skyrim and stuff like that, Outer Worlds, you'll kind of know the combat probably won't be the best thing ever, just because I don't know if it's using the same engine as before, but these games have never had the best combat, to be honest. Although that might change. We'll talk about Starfield a little bit later. But it looks like there's some cool abilities, you know, like these orbs that lift everyone into the air and slam people down and stuff like that. Lots and lots of violence, lots of kind of implications that maybe you're not necessarily the good guy. Lots of fighting bright glowing skeletons and spiders and lizard monsters. I just think it looks really cool. It looks like a really fun time. And again, it's a Bethesda thing, so it's going to be on Game Pass day one. Like, if you have Game Pass, you're not going to be buying this. You're just going to have a cool new RPG, cool new first-person RPG from the developers of one of the best first-person RPGs of all time. I'm super excited about that. I would expect it to be a bit smaller. Like, someone made a really good point on Reddit about this, that since Obsidian did, like, since Bethesda Game Studios announced Starfield and have been working on Starfield, Obsidian have released a whole bunch of games. Like, they've been, you know, they're the people who made Grounded. They're the people who made Pentiment. And I don't think they're a huge studio in the first place. So they've been working on lots of games. I would expect Avowed to be a smaller game. Like, it's not going to be on the same kind of scale as something like Starfield or Fallout New Vegas. It's going to be a smaller thing. But yeah, I'm super excited about it. I thought it was cool. It wasn't like, the trailer didn't blow me away. It wasn't the best thing ever. But I'm excited to have a colorful RPG. I think that's cool. Right, and then for the next game, we've got Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves have done these expansions for a while. The last time I really played Sea of Thieves was the Pirates of the Caribbean expansion. That was fantastic. Like, awesome missions, some really fun, like, if you're into the Pirates of the Caribbean ride and, you know, more so than the movies, there was some really cool stuff. And one of the things that was really, really cool in it was that there was a little Easter egg where, to do with Monkey Island, just like a little side quest, and then if you completed it, it played the theme tune for Monkey Island, and it was like, oh, this is a cool little Easter egg, because, you know, pirates and stuff. And now they're doing like full on, there is an expansion coming that is Sea of Thieves, The Legend of Monkey Island. You are going to Monkey Island. You're going to be interacting with Guybrush Threepwood and LeChuck and Elena. It looks very, very cool. I think Sea of Thieves does this really, really well. And this is something, you know, it's coming for free. It's coming this month, I think. It's coming towards the end of this month. You know, if you're into Sea of Thieves, I think this is awesome. If you're not in Sea of Thieves, this is probably a good thing to watch streamers play. Like, find a streamer who's really in Sea of Thieves and, you know, who already have a group they play with. And you'll just see some of the best content. Like, people have a great time with this. It's a really, really entertaining game to watch. And, you know, Monkey Island has a lot of a fun sense of humor. So this is cool. I probably won't play loads of it unless Name Gear and Arrow are up for getting into it. I probably won't be playing this month, just because there's a bunch of other stuff that I'm playing at the moment. There's a nice little nod there to the old Monkey Island games. There was an infamously difficult puzzle in the first Monkey Island game. I think it's the first one. Could be the second one. I could be wrong. Where there was a puzzle that just didn't make any sense. And Monkey Island is kind of famous for these, where you just had to try every possible combination of different items until you found it. And one of them was like, you had to get down a rope, and it's like you had to attach a chicken to a pulley in order to make a sort of zipline device. And here you can see everyone's going down zip lines using a chicken on a pulley. It's very funny, and it's kind of, you know, a nod to being like, hey, we understand these games. Like, we understand what's going on. So yeah, I think this will be really cool. I think this is something that I'll probably watch other people play rather than playing myself. But if you've got Game Pass, hey, you've got Sea of Thieves already, you can start playing Sea of Thieves now, and you can just hop into that. Oh, July 20th, so next month. Yeah, so next month for that one. Right, and then the next one, I mean, these games just... This was like one of the nice things about the showcase is I hadn't seen any spoilers for this. I didn't see a single leak for this showcase. Actually, no, I tell a lie. I did see the Persona stuff before it launched. But all of the Microsoft stuff I didn't. This, I just think looks amazing. So this is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. And basically, they did Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's insane that that game exists, let alone the fact it works on console. that you can literally go anywhere in the world and see a kind of, at least from the air, photorealistic version of the world. You can fly around, you can use all these different aircraft, and they've got all of the appropriate, you know, settings and controls and things like that. Interior and exteriors all modeled properly, real life weather. So, you know, you can be like, hey, I'm going to fly over the Congo today, and then you'll see what the weather is actually like in the Congo right now. Just into even like real air traffic and stuff, just insanely detailed. And now for Flight Simulator 2024, rather than just deciding to do something where they were like, oh, we're going to do that, but we're going to update the physics a bit, update the graphics a bit, and the graphics do look better in this, but like, oh, we're going to update this. Instead, they've gone for a very different kind of structure to it, where it's all about careers that use aircraft. And when I say careers that use aircraft, it's not like, hey, you can be a commercial pilot, you can be, you know, a cargo pilot, a passenger pilot, a private jet pilot. You can do those things, but you can do mountain rescue, you can do aerial construction, you know, like when they use helicopters to lift things up. You can run a skydiving plane and watch people parachuting out your plane. Yeah, it shows there a big lifting helicopter lifting a electricity pylon on top of it. You can do cargo planes with like the ridiculous beluga plane that can carry other planes inside it. You can do cargo supplies for Arctic research stations. You can do mountain rescue, taking helicopters into crazy places like that. You can run an air ambulance. Just like, you know, air races. It's got like the Red Bull Air Race in there. Like anything that you can think of, really, like careers that use planes. I don't know if they've got any police type things. I don't think I've seen that. That would be kind of interesting. I don't know, maybe it is in there as well. But nearly every career you can think of that uses an aircraft, it seems like they're just building something around it. It does make me wonder whether the structure of the game is going to be much more kind of linear in a way. Like, I think that was something that maybe was missing from the last Flight Simulator, that, you know, it was an incredible sandbox, an incredible simulator, if you knew what you already wanted to do. If you didn't really know what you wanted to do, I think a lot of people, me included, felt a bit aimless in it, that you'd feel a little bit like, oh, I don't really like know where to go. I don't know where to start. I don't know what planes to use and stuff like that. And there was a little bit of a career mode and the bush tracker things, but there wasn't a lot to really sort of keep you focused. This, it would be cool if it was like, hey, you do this, and then you'll be able to move up to doing this. You know, you start off with a little bit of like private jet flying, and then you get to work up to doing passenger jets, and then the big cargo jets, and then the more extreme cargo missions, or you do a little bit of like helicopter, you know, showing tourists around, and then you can work your way up to doing mountain rescue and stuff like that. That would be cool. I think that would be cool, but it'll be interesting to see what it is. Oh yeah, like science missions going after tornadoes. There's bloody tornadoes in the game now. Experimental flights, flying experimental things, flying A-10 Warthogs through valleys. Yeah, like private jet stuff. Airship tours, hot air balloons, like going over the Masai Mara. Like that looks like Kenya, Tanzania. Flying over that in a hot air balloon. That's insane that you're going to be able to fly a hot air balloon. I'm going to be flying hot air balloons over like Disney World and stuff. And obviously, doing it this way, doing the sequel this way, means that they can use the world that they've already created. And, you know, there's a million expansions already that other third-party companies have done, because they've got this insane modding thing where it's like, hey, if another company wants to fully model a certain airport or a certain city or whatever, they can, and then they can sell it on the marketplace, and people who are interested, you know, if that's your local airport or something, you can pay to have that, like, fully modeled thing. It's a super cool business model. It's just, I don't know, Flight Simulator blows me away, and I had no idea they were doing a new one. So really excited about that. That's coming out next year. I think that could be a huge amount of fun. It is a new game house, so that is a sequel. They have confirmed it is a complete sequel. So yeah, having some more goals in it will definitely be good. Then we've got another little expansion to the current Flight Simulator that's actually coming out later this year, and that is Dune, the new Dune film. The ornithopters from there, you're going to be able to fly them. Now, there hasn't been any confirmation of, like, are you actually on Arrakis, or are they just doing this in a desert somewhere on Earth? They show a spice harvester at one point. Are there going to be sandworms? Are you going to have to do the thing where you fly a carryall and go pick up a harvester just before it gets eaten by a worm? It feels like it'd be crazy if they didn't do that. But also, are they really going to model a sandworm in Flight Simulator? I've got no idea. But I think it's really cool having the ornithopter on there. Very, very cool. They did a tie-in bit of DLC that was free, by the way. You didn't have to pay for it, for Top Gun Maverick when that came out. And it was awesome. Like, you could fly some of the missions from the film in the game, and they did it really well. We got the same plane, same cockpit for like the experimental aircraft at the beginning and stuff, at Dark Star, whatever it's called. It was really cool. And yeah, all of this just included on Game Pass. You don't have to pay any extra. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, really, really cool. Excited about that. And that was a nice surprise. Then we saw a bit of Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2. I kind of agree with what a few people were saying, that it's a shame that we didn't see something that looked more like proper gameplay in this. Like, it was very much a story sequence. It did get across the thing that makes Hellblade special, though, which some people I think have forgotten. The thing that makes Hellblade special is the audio. Like, the fact that you've constantly got the different elements of your psyche whispering to you. If you've never played Hellblade, it's on Game Pass. It's well worth it. Just make sure you play it with headphones. Make sure you play it with headphones. You've constantly got like doubts, and sometimes, you know, your mind trying to G you on and like encourage you constantly in your ear. And it's really, really effective. It works really, really well. It feels crazy that this game was a game that I thought was going to be a launch game for the Xbox Series X, and we still don't really know exactly when it's coming out. But it does look really good. Like, nothing about this has made it look any worse. It still looks super interesting. It's keeping the same kind of creepy, magical, Nordic vibes, but also grounded in sort of like real mental health and, you know, a deep character. I think that's all very, very cool. It's just kind of, I thought we'd be playing it by now. It says 2024, like, but nothing more specific than that. Then we've got this trailer, which was a very, very funny trailer. This is the new Yakuza game. So for anyone who doesn't know, Yakuza's kind of split off into 3 different series now. You have Like a Dragon, which is more like traditional Yakuza games. You have Yakuza, which is the turn-based game with this protagonist, which is a bit funnier, a little bit more kind of sort of tongue-in-cheek, as it were. And then you have Judgment, which is the detective ones. This one, it's made me want to go back and play the last Yakuza game, the first one that he was in. I started it and enjoyed it, but then something else must have come out. It looks really, really funny. The combat was really cool in that game. So yeah, I'm definitely going to play some more of this. This was a fun trailer. It's, again, not really much about gameplay. It was much more like just showing that this is a funny Yakuza game. But it's called Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which even that is quite a funny name. Thought it looked really, really good. Right, and then the next game, there's just so many games in this. Oh, this actually, I tell a lie. When I said at the beginning, every single trailer was for something that I want to play, this was probably the exception. So now we're on Fallout 76. Fallout 76, I just think is bad. I've tried playing it a bunch of times. We bought it at launch, both me and my wife did. We were excited about it. It is not a good game. I've never thought it was a good game. But they do keep adding to it. They do definitely have an audience. They've got a community. And it looks like they're getting a whole new area, which is very, very cool. They're getting like a new, what's it called, Atlantic City expansion. Sounds very cool. The trailer was really good. Like, this was a really solid trailer. It almost made me think maybe I should reinstall Fallout 76, but I'm not going to. I'm just not, because yeah, like it's every time I've played it, I've just got so bored so quickly. So not for me, Fallout 76. But then we go on to this game, which is one of the most colorful games I've ever seen. This is a new game from Capcom, and again, I can't actually remember the name of this. I'm gonna have to look it up because oh, there we go. Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess. This is another game. It's a Capcom game, but it's going to be available on Game Pass day one. Looks like a third-person action game. The combat looked all right in this. You know, it didn't look anything spectacular, but the world and the art style really does look spectacular. It looks like something like we've never seen before. I don't even really know what game I would compare it to. Like, it's a sword fighting game where you're fighting monsters. It looks very, very fast. Maybe like a bit like sort of Devil May Cry, Bayonetta type thing, but then sometimes the camera moves out and it looks like there's a lot more movement involved. Almost, you know, like a Diablo-y type thing. I don't know if it's co-op or if it's single player. I feel like we don't know much about this, but it looks super pretty. Unbelievably colorful. A very unique art style, kind of, you know, Japanese folklore, but with neon, not neon, but very vibrant colors. I thought it looks interesting, and it's on Game Pass, so I will 100% give it a go again. Then after that, we had the Forza trailer. Forza Motorsport is another game that I was really excited about. I was hoping for a few more details about the game from this. I was hoping to see a little bit more about, okay, what's multiplayer going to be like? How are they going to structure the campaign, the sort of career and stuff? It seemed a lot more like this was about car customization and showing off a couple of cars, which is fine. The game itself looks absolutely stunning. Like, I don't know if there's another game that's looked better than this. I know with car games, they always like have an advantage that you can do reflections and stuff. You can do very smooth, clean lines, and it looks really, really good. But the interiors of the cars in this just look absolutely stunning. I'm really excited about it. I've been wanting a new Forza like track-based game, so Forza Motorsport, for a long while. So I'm really, really excited about that. You can see like in the trailer they go through like upgrade things, and it's, you know, exactly kind of what you'd expect, really, that you can put new parts on there. You can see very clearly how that's going to affect the performance of the car. You also have the different levels of the car, so you know what class it's in. So this car, they're looking at a Corvette, and it's an S rank car. So obviously you don't want it to go into S1, so you need to like try and make it better in the ways that matter to you without pushing it into the next class. That's been kind of the way you do upgrades in Forza forever. The things that I really want to know about this game are you going to be using your custom cars by default in the multiplayer, which kind of sucks to me, because then it's like if you spend a lot of time in the game, you're going to have a massive advantage over people, and every race is a bit more like, oh, that person's got a car that is incredibly good at this track and I don't. I'd rather just be able to, on day one, just hop into multiplayer and race against people. But, you know, we'll see. I'm sure they will show more about this. They have said that there's another Xbox showcasey type thing happening later this week, which is going to go into more depth about some of these games. You know, it's not going to be like announcements. It's going to be much more revealing more information about the games that they've already shown. So I'm hoping we get a bit more of like, you know, Forza developer blogs and things like that over the next week or two, just to kind of show off what's really happening. But I am super excited. Powell just said in chat, he said made a really good point, where he said, your biggest gripe with racing games these days is that couch co-op is you versus a mate with no AI and it's dull. Like, 100%, I think, like, it's my biggest problem with racing games over the last, like, 10 years, really, is that since racing games, since Burnout Paradise pushed racing games to be, like, open world, it feels like multiplayer racing has really taken a backseat, that to have any fun with it, you have to all be online, and you have to have a lot of people, like 10 people, all on the same page, ready to listen to you, organize stuff. It takes a lot of organization, and then you can have some fun. Speaking of which, I'm going to be playing some Formula 1 2023 later today. I'm allowed to play that from 4 o'clock, I think, so I'm really excited to be able to play that. And I'm going to be able to do some custom races with some people. But today I'm going to stream some of the stories. So if you want to see Formula 1 2023, 4 o'clock today, I'm going to be streaming that over on Twitch. But yeah, it's definitely, I don't know. It definitely feels like racing games have abandoned that idea of just having some casual fun with your friends, you know, just hopping in and being like, okay, there's only 2 of us who want to play this. We're all going to have the same spec car. Like, you know, you can choose from like 6 or 7 cars, but they're all balanced, so they're all equal. You don't need to have played the single player to unlock them or anything like that. And then put a load of AI on the track too and just have some fun. Like, and maybe even do things, you know, like a little sort of tournament type thing where you have like 6 races in a row and then you get points for each one. Stuff like that just feels like it's very rare now in racing games, which I feel like is a real shame. They've gone much more for like this RPG style of, you know, car PG. They've gone for of you building up your collection of cars, working on the specific cars, tuning them, fitting parts to them, stuff like that, then taking them online to compete against other people's cars. That is like not the side of it I enjoy. I enjoy the racing rather than the car tuning and stuff like that. But, you know, maybe I'm in the minority. There must be a reason why they're all doing it the way they're doing it. But there's been some fun things. Fireworks popping. I love the subtitles on these things. They're good. Engines roaring. So anyway, that was Forza. It's coming out in October. Annoyingly, well, sort of not that annoyingly, it's coming out while I'm in LA. You know, I'd much rather be in LA, to be honest. So I'm excited about that. But I will, of course, be playing that when I get back from LA. Looking forward to it. Then we've got another Bethesda game. This is for the Elder Scrolls Online Necrom expansion, which is coming out very soon, like in a week or two. Elder Scrolls Online is one of those games where if I had time, I'd play it, but it's just another game that you need to devote an incredible amount of time to. And alongside like Call of Duty and, you know, Destiny that I play sometimes, and Diablo now, and sometimes I hop into World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14, just Elder Scrolls as always, but Elder Scrolls Online's been one that I've left out. I do know a lot of people really, really love it and are really into it, and I think it's got better and better over the years. Apparently, you can play it just basically like a single player game, which is really cool. But yeah, probably not one I'm going to have time to play. But one day I'll probably just go through and play an absolute ton of this. Like if there's ever a big drought where there's no new games coming out, there's going to be so much content that I could go through for Elder Scrolls Online. Right. Oh, and then House UK saying, I like my Sims. I want Forza to be a sweet spot of Simcade so I can play it with my mates who won't touch a real sim racer like Assetto Corsa. Yeah, like, I mean, that's exactly what I want from racing games, is I like it when there are real cars in it, but it feels quite arcadey. Like, that's why I like the Need for Speed games, you know, and I like the Forza games. I like it where they don't take themselves too seriously. You can use real cars, and, you know, if you've got a favorite car, you can hop into it and paint it the way you want and put liveries on it and stuff like that. But super accessible, anyone can get into it. You know, I'm not going to get into iRacing or Assetto Corsa or stuff like that. Formula One I quite like because it has loads of options where you can just be like, hey, we're playing a multiplayer race. Let's press this button that makes all of the cars the exact same. And I love stuff like that. I just want that in a game. I want racing games to have an arcadey mode where it's like, we're going to set it up so every car is the exact same and you're just going out on a track with your friends. That's it. That's all I want. And yeah, couch co-op is really nice. That's why me and my wife have 2 Xboxes and 2 TVs down in the living room so we can play games. Like, we can do races online, even if it doesn't support split screen. Then we had an Overwatch 2 trailer. This was kind of interesting because Overwatch 2, we did a podcast about how they made a big deal that they were cancelling the campaign stuff. And then they've done this big thing saying, hey, in August, we're releasing a bunch of new stuff, including a load of co-op missions. And it's like, wait a minute, isn't this what you said you were cancelling? I guess they're releasing some of the stuff that they were working on, and it's just they don't want to call it a full story campaign. But it definitely looks like there's going to be some story campaign. There's a lot of kind of the Overwatch heroes fighting through enemy AI and stuff. Looks interesting. Definitely enough for me to be like, oh yeah, I might give this a go. Like, if the reviews are good, I'll give it a try. Yeah, there's like co-op events, there's story missions, I think it says. The story of Overwatch has always been pretty good. And then there's some new pack that's on Game Pass. So if you've got Game Pass Ultimate on August 10th, you get a bunch of heroes and some skins and stuff for them, which is cool. Pretty fun. Right, and then the next one, we're going back to more Persona. Just going to read a couple of the chat messages before I move on too much. A Strong Dose said, I was so disappointed to not see Halo in the showcase. Not a good look. Microsoft took a lot of those devs and sent them to patch up Starfield more before release. I don't think any of that... well, I mean, obviously there wasn't any Halo. I don't think I agree with you. I was thinking, you know, oh, should I, in this podcast, talk about the things that we didn't see in the showcase? And it's like, I always think that's weird to judge a showcase for stuff that they didn't put in. You know, it's like, I would have loved to see, like, Halo Battle Royale. Although, more and more I think about it, the more I think that wouldn't be very good. But it's like, I think it's weird to judge something based on what you wanted it to be rather than what it was. I don't think Halo Infinite has been good. I don't think Halo Infinite has turned itself around in the same way Battlefield 2042 is. There's still not enough content. There's still not the things that it should have had at launch. I'm kind of happy for them to move on. I don't think Halo is in a good place, and I don't think, like, Microsoft want to be seen as like the Halo company anymore, like Xbox seen as the Halo company, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I also don't think they would have sent the developers from Halo Infinite to go patch up Starfield. That seems very unlikely, like to have the developers from 343 who worked on Halo, which is on a completely different engine that was seen as, like, you know, kind of unsuccessful and it didn't work very well in lots of ways. The idea of them being sent over to Bethesda, which is a company that Xbox are pretty hands-off with, like they don't do too much with, which also have been working on a completely different engine for decades. I don't think that's anything. I don't think there's anything to that, Strong Dose. I'm sorry, I disagree. There was no Stalker 2 news. I think, like, for anyone who was expecting Stalker 2 stuff as well, obviously Stalker 2 is made by a Ukrainian development studio. They have had some of their developers die in the war, and a lot of them have been obviously preoccupied with fighting and keeping their families safe. I know they moved some of the development over to Poland to, like, carry on working on it, but then they also had a bunch of Russian hackers hacked their like servers or whatever, I don't know, their group, and leak a torrent of the game So people have been able to play a leaked version of Stalker, which is obviously devastating for the developers, because it's like, not only are people pirating your game, but they're pirating an unfinished version of the game, which then people will share screenshots and videos and be like, hey, look, this isn't very good because it's unfinished. And so that's really, really damaging to them. So yeah, they've been having a bloody awful time right now. And so I'm not too surprised that we didn't see like more of it right now. I think we're going to be waiting a while for Stalker 2. And, you know, obviously that's fine and something that people should definitely support. People should definitely, you know, support those developers with that. Right, this is another Persona game, Persona Tactics. This is one of those games where it's like, this doesn't look entirely like my thing. These tactics games are normally quite fun. This chibi style isn't really for me, but it's on Game Pass. And it's like, the gameplay of this looks interesting enough. Like games like Mario and Rayman Rabbids and stuff, where the gameplay is like, not my cup of tea exactly, but it was interesting enough that I gave it a go and enjoyed, you know, I probably put like 10 hours into Mario and Rayman Rabbids, Mario and Rabbids, whatever it was called. It was interesting enough to hold my interest, even though I didn't like the style and I didn't like the story and stuff like that. This is on Game Pass, so it's just something that I will give it a go. It looks fun. Not really my cup of tea, but because it's on Game Pass, I'll give it a try. Right, the next bit. The next game, another Bethesda game. Oh, this is the Starfield trailer. We're going to talk about Starfield a lot more later on, but holy crap, this game looks good. Like, Starfield just looks absolutely phenomenal. I was really excited about Starfield going into this. I've said repeatedly over the last year, Starfield is my most anticipated game of 2023. It's the game I'm looking forward to the most. Everything they showed off about Starfield in this entire showcase was like so far beyond what I expected. Like so much better than I expected. And it's just kind of, it was like, I was genuinely overwhelmed when I was watching it. Like, I normally, when I'm sitting there, like me and my wife watch these, normally we're watching these showcases, like I'm kind of half on my phone reading Twitter, seeing what people are saying. My wife's on her phone, you know, like checking Instagram, whatever, and like sort of half paying attention to the showcase. I was sat there like completely enraptured by this trailer and by the deep dive that they went into later for Starfield, just being like, every clip, like every like single shot they showed off was something where I was like, oh my God. Like, that's amazing. That's incredible. I was kind of expecting Skyrim in space and thinking that would be cool. And it just seems like it's so much more than that. Like, it looks like it's got a lot of things that I would love from Skyrim and from Fallout and from Star Citizen and from Elite Dangerous and from, like, bloody Firefly and from The Expanse. And just, like, it's almost like someone's, like, gone into my brain and picked out all of the things that I would want in an RPG and just been like, let's do this. And like Mass Effect, there's, you know, obviously inspiration from things like Mass Effect, but in the best possible way, where it's like, hey, it's really cool. No Man's Sky, there's some ideas from No Man's Sky, and have taken the good ones. It's like, just incredible. Like, absolutely incredible. Like, when it's like these little combat sequences that they put in, and it's like, oh, the shooting actually looks like, the shooting looks quite good now. Like, oh, the spaceship flying. Oh, they're doing dogfights with the spaceships that you can design yourself. Just looks incredible. We're going to talk about it later. But holy crap, I'm excited for Starfield. I was very close to just spending hundreds of pounds yesterday on, like, the Starfield headset, the Starfield controller, the Starfield bloody digital watch thing that you can get. I didn't. I stayed strong because I don't have a lot of money. I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't do this when I'm like struggling to think about, can I definitely pay the bills for the rest of the year? I don't really think I need to be spending hundreds of pounds on controllers and headsets and watches. But I was so wrapped up in this, just like, oh my God, it's amazing. Anyway, we'll talk about Starfield when we get to the direct later. And I am going to do a whole video about Starfield today as well. Talking about some of the stuff. This is another game that I was super excited about. So I've been thinking for a long while that I've wanted a climbing game. I've always thought it'd be cool if there was a game that just focused on climbing. I've always thought in my head, my perfect game would be like a big multiplayer game where you all start at the bottom of a mountain, a procedurally generated mountain, and then it's a race to see who can summit at the first, who can get to the top. And, you know, so do you want to go on a riskier route, but that's maybe a bit quicker? Do you want to go on a safer, steadier route? Maybe you could get like different abilities, different classes. You know, one person could make a few more leaps and stuff, or one person could put ropes to stop them from falling. One person could maybe do stuff to frustrate other climbers. All stuff like that. I thought that'd be really cool. Anyway, this game isn't that. I don't know why I'm talking about it. This is Jusant. I don't really know if that's how you pronounce it, but it looks really cool. It's a game from Don't Nod. It's going to come out this year. So this is another 2023 game, and it's on Game Pass from day one. And it's just a game about climbing by looks of it. It's set in like this fantasy, vaguely sort of looks like maybe post-apocalyptic, futuristic world, like big mountains in a desert. But it just looks like you're climbing. Just climbing stuff, and it looks awesome. You know, there's like nets that you're climbing up, there's rungs, you're sometimes using guide ropes and stuff, you've got a few little gadgets, sometimes you're climbing up moss and stuff, there's weather effects, there's different plants and creatures, like vague fantasy type things. I just think this looks absolutely spectacular, and again, super colourful, like just so colourful and so vibrant. I think it looks awesome. So yeah, this was another really nice surprise, like seeing a game that I'd never heard of, I had no idea this existed, and then I see it and it's like, oh yeah, I definitely like 100% want to play this. I think this looks awesome. I think it'll be a really fun game to stream as well. So yeah, another game very excited about. Jusant coming in autumn this year. Then, just to keep on going, another game that looks awesome that I'd never heard of, that I didn't know anything about. So this is published by Secret Mode, which is always good news for me because I know a couple of people that work there. So hopefully, you know, I always hope to get like previews and early access stuff. This is a game that is called Still Wakes the Deep. That's it. And it's basically like, it seems like it's a exploration, maybe vaguely horror type game set on an oil rig. So you're exploring around an oil rig. Maybe there's monsters, I don't know. Maybe it's just like a psychological horror. It's coming out at the beginning of next year. It's gonna be on Game Pass. Looks really, really cool from the Chinese Room and Sumo Digital. Yeah, like I would say the quality of it, like the visuals of it, look really, really good. Everything looks very sort of chunky and physical and realistic in a way that I really like. So I thought that looked really good. I like the idea of having a horror game set on an oil rig. That sounds awesome. Yeah. Still Wakes Deep, another game never heard of before, looks absolutely awesome. Then, yet another game that looks very, very cool. This was called Dungeon of Hinterberg. When I first saw this, so when I first saw the trailer, I didn't really like the art style. It's got that kind of, who's that artist who does the, like, you know, cartoony style, big bright colors and lots of dots in it. I can't remember the name. Like, they used to have an exhibition of some of their work at the Tate Modern. But anyway, looks a bit like that, sort of like old comic books and stuff like that. You know, lots of weird textures that are covered in dots. Looks a little bit messy, a little bit noisy, I think is the word. But then when you start seeing the gameplay, it's like, oh, this actually looks really, really kind of interesting. There's lots of like grinding and moving around. There's some combat, like some sword fighting and stuff like that. Massive worlds to explore, treasure chest, stuff like that. All looks very, very cool, I would say. Oh, and it's coming to Game Pass day one next year. Awesome. Another game I probably wouldn't buy, but since it's on Game Pass, we'll definitely give it a go. And I've heard some people who are more familiar with that project super excited about it. Then we had a game that when I watched the showcase I didn't care about, but later I did, and that is Cyberpunk 2077's DLC Phantom Liberty. They did the thing that I'm not a big fan of, having the voice actor come out that had Keanu Reeves like talking about it. I don't really care about that stuff. I don't like Cyberpunk 2077. I played it and I thought it wasn't even just the bugs that put me off or the performance. It was the dead world, the skills being uninteresting, the combat being uninteresting, the story being bad. A bunch of people got to play this. A bunch of people have had a preview of this where they got to play a bunch of it. And a lot of them have come away, people who did originally feel like me, people who were like, oh yeah, this game isn't very good. Like, I don't like Cyberpunk and stuff. They've come away from it saying, hey, this actually is really good. Like, they've done loads of work on the skills. They've done loads of work on the combat. The world is much more interesting. The story is much better. People are really hyped about that. So that's got me more excited about this. It's made me think, do I want to maybe have another go at playing through Cyberpunk? Maybe I won't bother with all the side quests. I'll just play it on easy or something and just like fly through it to make a character that I care about a bit more. Because I don't think I got all the way to the end with the first one. I sort of like read what happened at the end and I was like, don't care. But yeah, after reading previews from people who have played this expansion, I'm definitely a bit more excited about this. So definitely going to give it a go. Then, so we'll just skip past the Cyberpunk stuff because we don't need to see more of it. It looks pretty. We all know Cyberpunk already looks pretty. Then after that, that's more Cyberpunk, more Cyberpunk, more Cyberpunk. God, this Cyberpunk trailer went on for bloody ever, didn't it? Phantom Liberty. Then we had City Skylines 2. I didn't know or had forgotten that this was going to be on Game Pass too. This is going to be on Game Pass as well, rather. This is City Skylines 2. City Skylines is an awesome game. Like, it sort of took over the mantle as the city building game after the last SimCity wasn't very good. This looks literally unbelievable to me. Like, supposedly this is gameplay. Supposedly this is all in engine. It's definitely not running on Xbox. It's definitely running on PC. Because I was just blown away at how good this looks. It's obviously got some kind of procedural generation going on that is far beyond any city building game we've seen before. The buildings just look so detailed and so realistic. And the way the traffic moves is so far beyond anything I've seen before. The lighting and everything looks absolutely spectacular. Like, I don't know. This just looks like, just looking there. This like a shot looking down for people who are just listening and don't have it. There's a shot looking down at a city and it showed that they were building it. And every part of it just looks so good. Like, just so interesting. And there's like things that you don't often see in these kind of games, like car parks everywhere. And I remember seeing a interview with a developer of City Skylines 1. And they were saying that it was one of the big things they did that was unrealistic with that game, was they took out car parks. Because they're saying if you actually look at a city from above, huge areas of cities are just car parks. Like, massive areas, especially once you get towards suburbs and stuff like that, and especially in America. And that's like less interesting, they were saying. And, you know, it's difficult because if you've got a car park, you've got to have the whole logic of like cars looking for spaces, cars maneuvering around each other. It's like a super complicated thing to do, and it's not that visually interesting. But it feels like they've changed their mind, because in this game, you've got tons of car parks, and they're different types of car parks that make sense for the buildings they are. It looks like they're kind of, I don't know, like there aren't cars in them at the moment, but it looks like, you know, there's separate bays that are the same size as the real cars. They look like they could be functional. I just think that's a really interesting thing, and I think that's what's contributed to making this look so good. Is just like, not just the lighting, which is amazing, and the shadows. Like, the shadows are outstanding as well. Like, you know, having buildings casting shadows on other buildings and stuff. It's that sort of thing that you don't realize that other games were missing until you see it in this, and it's like, oh, this looks really, really good. Like, really, really solid. You know, you've got streets that look appropriately shaded because of the buildings that are on either side of them. Just looks outstanding. And this, again, City Skylines 2, it's on Game Pass. So you'll just be able to play it. Looks absolutely, absolutely stunning. I sort of almost don't believe that the game will look this good. I definitely don't think it'll like run well on Xbox if it looks this good. Maybe they'll cut it down a lot. But on PC, this game's going to be insanely good. Just spectacular. And it's super detailed. And again, just like, well, there's a shot there of a power station. And things like this. I know I'm nerding out a little bit about stuff like this, but just looking at this power station, there we go, and I put it in. And it's got like separate car parks for different areas. Because obviously in reality, you know, in a video game, you'd think, oh, you got a power station, you need a car park for the employees. But obviously in reality, something as big as a power station would have different car parks. You know, maybe it would have a loading bay for deliveries. Maybe it would have like a reception area for visitors and things like that, you know, inspectors and whatnot. Then it would have like the general staff car parks. It would be a bigger area. And then it would have like extra buildings, like supporting buildings around nearby. It just, you know, and it doesn't, oh, and it doesn't have like one set of power cables going away from it. You know, it's got like big set, you know, infrastructure around it. It just looks very, very kind of realistic to me in a way that's very cool. I'm amazed at the leap between City Skylines 1 and this. And yeah, it shows there, you know, like a truck delivering logs and like going around country lanes, and it just looks like you're watching Truck Simulator or something. Bloody amazing. And the lighting and everything, yeah, when it's like the day-night cycle, it looks realistic at nighttime. City Skylines 2, I am shocked at how good that game looks. And that, again, coming this year. I've seen lots of people saying like, oh, the Xbox Showcase, it was all just 2024 stuff. They don't have anything that's anywhere close to coming out. It's like, they've got a bunch of stuff that's coming out. And this is another one coming October 24th, going to be on Game Pass. So, you know, just like this year, we've got Payday 3, Starfield, Forza, City Skylines, that climbing game, just aren't. A bunch of different things coming. Oh, and, you know, the Cyberpunk DLC, which is coming September 26th as well. Just so many different things coming. Absolutely awesome. Oh, and the Persona Tactics game and stuff like that as well. Very, very cool. Then the next game was Metaphor Refantasio. This is a new game from, I'm just trying to catch up with the video. This is a new game from Atlas, so makers of Persona. Really interesting. It's like, it definitely has Persona vibes in the way the UI works and everything like that. It has its own style, but like the shape of like the menus and everything looks very much like Persona. But it's much more like traditional fantasy, like high fantasy type thing. Looks very, very cool. I think really cool art style. People absolutely love Persona 5 and say it's one of the best JRPGs of all time. So I'm excited to see what this is like. I imagine it's the sort of game that probably my wife will play and I'll end up watching a lot of. I don't think that's not a Game Pass game. That's just Atlas saying, hey, next year we're making a new IP, a new series. And that's very cool. Then we've got Towerborn. This is a game from the people who made the Banner Saga games. Banner Saga trilogy is awesome. Really fun, like indie type games. Really interesting and sort of like a cool atmosphere as you sort of lead a group of Vikings around to try and help them to survive the winter. And this Towerborn game keeps on with that. It's a gorgeous looking game. Like the visuals look amazing. Apparently it is a co-op adventure. And you can see that there's lots and lots of combat, lots of very cool, I don't know if cel shaded is the right word for this, but lots of cartoon style movement. It's hard to tell exactly how much of it is 3D and how much of it is 2D, because sometimes it looks like they're playing Golden Axe or something, like running across the screen. But it looks absolutely gorgeous. Like all the animation, all of the art in it looks absolutely stunning. Having another like co-op game that's on Game Pass day one is always incredibly exciting. So yeah, Game Pass day one coming out next year. Because, you know, co-op games, one of the biggest problems is when you have a co-op game that you really want to play, but you can't convince your friends to spend money on them. If they've got Game Pass, you can just be like, oh, just get Game Pass for a month, and then we can just play it for a little bit. And then you can play, you know, Starfield and Forza and everything else. Very, very cool. Then the next game, this is a weird one. You remember when we watched Summer Games Fest and we were talking about that and we were saying there was a game that was completely ripping off Pokemon to the point where it's amazing that the game is allowed to be released. This game is that. So this game by In Exile, and it's called Clockwork Revolution. And I mean, how is this not BioShock Infinite? Like, this literally just looks like a different studio decided to make. It looks like a different studio has just decided that they want to make BioShock Infinite, and they've made it in their own style. There's automatons about. It's a first-person shooter. It looks like there's, you know, special abilities and things like that. There's some weird time travel-y stuff going on where there's like portals opening up to an alternate version of it, just like in BioShock Infinite. It's like everything about this looks a huge amount like BioShock Infinite. Now, the studio In Exile, they're known for doing Wasteland. Like, they did the more recent Wasteland games, not the original, but like the more recent ones, Wasteland 2 and Wasteland 3, that were super cool RPGs, but they were also like top-down, more traditional RPGs. So I don't think they've done a first-person shooter as far as I know, or they haven't done a first-person shooter that like people care about, I guess. I don't know, they've got a game called Hunted. That's an action role-playing game. I don't know. That's the only other action game I can see, but that didn't get good reviews. I'd be a bit dubious about this, be a bit worried about this, but it definitely looks interesting enough that I want to try it. And because In Exile are now a first-party studio, it's a Microsoft studio, that means this is going to be on Game Pass day one. Like, it's another game that you will be able to play. It's not got a release window. We don't know when it's coming out, but you'll be able to play it. And I do love single-player adventure first-person shooters. I always think, like, I've got a lot of time for them. I'm always interested to explore a new world and stuff like that. I'm just shocked at how much like BioShock Infinite is. Like, really, it is. Like, you know, it's wearing its inspiration on its sleeve a little bit, maybe. Right, anyway. The next one, oh, then we had Phil Spencer coming out and just talking about a few different things, and I think that might have been the end of it. Oh, then they announced the Xbox Series S. They were doing a new Xbox Series X that is black and has a big hard drive. Fair enough, very cool. But after that, we had the main event, really. Todd Howard coming out and doing a Starfield Direct. And I would say this is just easily one of the best, like, what do you call it? Game presentations, like game showcases I've ever seen. Like, it went on for bloody ages. It was like nearly an hour long, like 45 minutes or so of showing off Starfield. And it's like, I can't understand what anyone else would have wanted more than this. Like, I don't understand what would have been better than the way they showed us off. There was like so much gameplay, so much like developers explaining the ideas behind things, so much like showing how different systems work, showing different possibilities. No spoiling anything, like no spoiling anything to do with the story or anything like that, but just showing like, hey, these are the possibilities. This is what this game's about. This is what this game is capable of. And it is more than any other game. Like, I think there was a lot of people that saw Bethesda Game Studios do Morrowind, then do Oblivion, do Fallout 3, do Skyrim, and people were like, they've peaked. Like, people were like, oh, okay, by the time we got to Skyrim, that was kind of the culmination of everything from Oblivion, from Morrowind, Oblivion, Fallout 3, from learning all of that stuff. They kind of put it together, and then they just kept releasing Skyrim over and over again. I think there were lots of people that were like, this is it. And Skyrim, you know, it's easy to forget, when it launched was still a bit of a mess. You know, it's a buggy mess, like performance wasn't great, lots of problems, but people were obsessed with like just the possibilities within the world, the things you could do, the amount of freedom you had, how exciting it was to explore the world of Skyrim. It was just so good. Like, so good. And and by the way, it's worth pointing out, Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online were not made by the same people. Like, it's the same studio, but they weren't like, it wasn't the same team working on it. Essentially, since Skyrim was made, that team have been working on Starfield. And I feel like they've just, like how Skyrim kind of, I think Skyrim kind of reset what people expected from a first-person RPG and almost ruined the industry, I would say. And I've been thinking about talking this on a podcast. Next time we have a slow news day, I'll probably talk about it in more length. I think there's some games that come along and ruin the games industry. And this is one of them. And it's like, you know, you look at something like GTA 5, Red Dead Redemption 2, Call of Duty. They're games that have such Forza Motorsport, Forza Horizon. They're games that have such a huge amount of money and incredible talent spent on them, and time a lot of the time, you know, games that take a long time to make. Not Call of Duty so much, but the others. And then other games can't compete with that. Like, you know, you can't make a new studio and make a first-person shooter that's going to compete with Call of Duty. You can't make a new football game that's going to compete with FIFA. You can't make an open-world crime game that's going to compete with Grand Theft Auto. Like, remember when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out and there was so many games that tried to do something similar? You know, you had things like, what was it called? True Crime or something. You had Mafia. You had Saints Row. You had, what was the British one called? There was one that's The Getaway, Driver. There was so many games being like, oh yeah, we could do something like that. We could compete with it. And then GTA 5 came out and everyone else was like, you got this. Like, you can't make a game that competes with that. It's just not even like, oh, there isn't like, you don't have the creativity or you don't have the ideas. It's like, you don't have the resources to make another game. That game already exists and is doing everything so well. It's raised the bar so high that anything you made would look like crap in comparison to it. And like, that must be really difficult for smaller studios to compete with. And it forces them, you know, in some ways for gamers, it's good because then it forces those smaller studios to look for new game types, new game genres, try new things. And, you know, because the only way they can really compete for a market is by doing something different. But they can't do the same thing. Same with Call of Duty. You know, you look at back in the days of early Call of Duty games, there used to be like a ton of first-person shooter multiplayer games. You know, you obviously had like Battlefield and you had Medal of Honor, and you know, you'd get like Titanfall and stuff like that. There was a bunch of different games that would try to do a similar thing. And then, you know, Call of Duty got to the point where it was doing things like, you know, everything from kind of Modern Warfare onwards, but like really like getting into its own with Warzone and stuff like that and Modern Warfare 2019. And it's like other companies have been like, yeah, we don't really need to make an FPS multiplayer shooter because Call of Duty's just done it. Like, we can't compete with Call of Duty anymore. We can't make a game that feels that good, that runs that good, that has that amount of content. And, you know, similar to Fortnite with the Battle Royale stuff, there's very few companies can compete with that and can, like, now gamers have played those games. They expect that. Like, they expect their more realistic-looking first-person shooters to feel as good as Call of Duty. They don't even think that Call of Duty feels good. But when they play something else, they're like, oh, this feels terrible, because they're used to how good Call of Duty feels. They're used to the update cadence of something like Fortnite. You know, they're used to there being new stuff every month, like new game-changing things and new characters and licenses and stuff. It's just like insane. And I feel like Starfield, we're seeing that happen again, where if I was working on like a sequel to No Man's Sky, or I was working on the next Mass Effect game, I'd be absolutely crapping myself after watching this Starfield presentation. Like, I'd just be terrified, because I just think this is raising the bar again to a point where other people can't compete with the fact that, you know, Bethesda Game Studios have been working on this for years and years and years. They have the financial backing of Microsoft to do it. They have some of the most talented first-person RPG creators who worked on Fallout 3 and Skyrim. Like, it's like, how do you fight against that? How do you compete against that? Just seems absolutely stunning. So yeah, I am very, very, very excited about this. Just insanely excited about it. And I want to see more about it as soon as it comes out. Just seeing a couple of things in chat. Bod said, do we know if Starfield's multiplayer? No, it is not multiplayer. It's just single player, 100%. Strong Dose is 100% wrong. It is not multiplayer. You can't run into other players and fight them. Yeah, this is, I mean, just look at this. Like, for people who are listening to this, we're just looking at a shot of Starfield, and this is, you know, in-game. It's got the UI up and everything. That's something you don't often see in games, is having the UI on screen. I do wonder if this is the whole UI, because there's things that seem to obviously be missing. Like, there's no compass as far as I can tell, unless the thing at the bottom left, that where there's an icon. Maybe that's the compass pointing you to a waypoint, but there's nothing on screen being like, you know, no little arrow being like, hey, go this way, no little trail pointing you off. But they're standing on a planet, an alien planet. There is mountains in the distance. There are rolling hills close up with various types of grass, like, you know, different types of plants. There's like trees that look appropriate for the climate. You know, it looks like a very hot, dusty place. And you've got trees that look like the sort of trees you'd find in the Mediterranean, a hot, dusty place. You've got either dust or clouds rolling through valleys in the mountains. And then you've got light coming across. The sun is sort of like just over the mountains and casting these like dramatic shadows, illuminating some of the dust or the fog in the air. The character is wearing like a spacesuit that looks kind of realistic. They talked about the idea that the aesthetic they're going for is like NASA punk, where it's like things look functional and like the sort of thing you would expect NASA to create, but then it has like this bit of flair. You know, it's got the punk side of it, is just kind of a bit of creative license to make it look more interesting, look a little bit more exciting. You know, so things don't have to be 100% okay, this would make sense. So like he's got a jetpack on his back and it looks very like worn. It's got, you know, lots of plastic parts on it that look like they've been beaten up and stuff like that, and it's got the paint is a bit chipped and stuff, and the jets are there, like, you know, and it's got like an area around that looks scorched where the jets would be, but also it doesn't have massive fuel storage or the sort of thing you would actually need for a jetpack. Like, you know, they haven't gone to the trouble of being like, oh well, we need to think about where the fuel would be stored for this, so we're going to do this, this, and this. Instead, it's more like, oh, okay, well, like, this looks good, you know, this looks realistic enough, and it looks very cool, which is just awesome. But yeah, and oh my god, oh yeah, that is a compass in the bottom left. Man, if that is the UI, that's so nice. That's so like unobtrusive. But yeah, and you can see there's like an alien lizard thing running up the hill. Also important, the alien thing is not just like paying attention to the player, it's just kind of going about doing its own thing. Like, you could just watch it. There's some crazy like structure type thing on the top of one of the hills that looks like, you know, is that metal or something? It's a weird shape. You could go look at it. And the sun, they've said that, you know, because this is a galaxy, you're going to be able to go to loads of different solar systems. The lighting, they've talked a lot about the lighting model, that it depends on the type of sun. So you might have, like, this looks like quite a red sun, and that means that the lighting has this kind of softer look on everything. Like, my God, this looks amazing. I am going to be 100% like just in awe of this while I'm playing it. It just, everything about the showcase looks so bloody good. And Joe's coming in chat being sort of like, oh, it's like, oh, it looks like No Man's Sky. It looks like Star Citizen. And my point, kind of what I was saying earlier, is like, I'd be terrified of us making those games because it just looks so much better than those things. Like, it's taking so many ideas, like No Man's Sky, where obviously they were relying a lot. They were a tiny studio. They didn't have so long to make it. They were working a lot of procedural generation and things like that. And with them, it was kind of the idea of using procedural generation and your imagination to try and be like, oh, cool, imagine what this planet would be like. And they had to do it in a very abstract way. This is much more kind of handcrafted, much more realized, much more like, hey, okay, so you've got like things like gravity are different based on the size of the planet and the density of the planet. The lighting model is different based on the type of star that's there. Like the weather and stuff like that can be different based on what's going on. It's just kind of so far beyond what No Man's Sky was doing. Like, No Man's Sky was an incredible idea, and it's amazing what they managed to make with such a small team. But like Starfield's now like, hey, you know what you wanted from No Man's Sky? This is it. Like, this is the sort of like the reality of what is actually there. And like, you know, Star Citizen, where they've been trying to be like, oh yeah, there's going to be loads of different planets you can go to and you can land everywhere. And they're doing it, and it's like, you know, glitchy as hell, and loads of the planets look the exact same. And they've got like things, you know, like gravity and stuff like that aren't modeled very well because their physics engine is broken and stuff like that. And it's like now Bethesda are coming along and being like, oh yeah, like this is, you know, what it looks like when a competent game studio is making it. This is what it looks like when you have a real game studio making it. It just absolutely blew me away. Like, really incredible. I'm not going to watch through the entire thing. Oh, and they said, like, they did a really funny thing where there's a very famous thing. I think it was in Oblivion when that was being shown off. And they were like, oh, you see that mountain in the distance? You can go there. Then they did a thing in this presentation where they were like, you see that moon in the distance? That's not a skybox. That is in orbit. You can go to that moon. Like, you can see a planet or a moon in the sky and you can be like, oh yeah, if you want, you can get in your spaceship and just fly there and land there and explore that and then look back at the planet you were just on. It's like, oh, I mean, that's, again, something that No Man's Sky did manage to do with a little bit of trickery involved. And I'm sure there'll be a little bit of trickery involved in this too. But God, it's just so exciting to see a game of like this quality. I mean, look how different that is. Like going from like this, where it looks like they're on some kind of barren moon without an atmosphere. And so you've got like a very kind of clear looking sky, incredibly harsh contrast compared to this planet where you've got like, you know, oh, the atmosphere is diffusing all of the light and everything looks soft and everything looks really vibrant and colorful. Like just, oh my God. Like for a certain type of person, and I am that certain type of person, this game looks absolutely amazing. Like look at in this desert, and you've got like, because it's a desert, because it's sandy, you've got like the dust moving around in the wind and stuff like that. You can see that there's a moon up in a corner that's partially eclipsed by the planet that you're on. Just like, well, actually no, it's probably partially eclipsed by that planet, I think, because it looks like the sun's over there and there's a planet, a ringed planet there that's being illuminated from that side. So that's why that side of it. And then you've got that coming up there. Oh, it just looks so bloody good. And then you've got like dense jungly type planets. You've got this planet that looks completely different and has birds flying over it. Just every single, like there you've got like a rain system. So you've got a weather system where there's like lightning, and the lightning looks super good and is illuminating everything. The aliens look really interesting and look a bit different from things that we've seen before. Just like everything about this Starfield presentation was bloody amazing. Like, just the sheer variety. There's snow there, like snow-capped mountains. It looks absolutely stunning. And it's like, the idea of exploring worlds like this is just so far beyond anything that we've seen elsewhere. Here, you've got like the indirect light being reflected off the planet onto the surface of this. Looks absolutely amazing. Loads of moons in that system. And all of the ships look really cool. We'll talk about the ships in a bit more. And, you know, these giant structures. The fact that you have these like lush jungles and rainforests and stuff. And then you've obviously got this whole thing that's kind of like what we were talking about with taking the best ideas out of No Man's Sky and stuff. That you can, if you want to play this game just as a game where you play it like No Man's Sky and you go around surveying stuff and you go around being like, okay, this planet has 4 types of animal that we haven't seen before, 3 types of plant that we haven't seen before, and 8 resources that we haven't seen before. Go check them out. Go try and find them. You can do that. You can land anywhere on the planet. It's not like Outer Worlds where you have to land like in this one settlement, and even though there's a whole planet, you get it. You just land wherever you want. If you want to land at the settlement, you can. If you want to land somewhere completely different, do that. Just like a little bit of mining there, using a mining laser to go pick stuff up, and the way it breaks is a little bit, obviously a bit more convincing than other games that we've seen that do the same sort of thing. All the different materials, like this is an abandoned mine. This just looks like, one of the kind of random little places. One thing that I noticed that they didn't talk about in this entire presentation, which I think is really interesting, is they didn't talk about procedural generation. They didn't say that all of this stuff, because there's multiple solar systems, there's multiple planets within every solar system. Each planet has like different points of interest and stuff like that. They were saying some of them are like barren moons where they'll be resource heavy, but there's not really any sort of life there. Some of them will be, places where there's cities and things like that. They didn't talk about procedural generation, which makes me think there's a lot more handcrafted stuff in this than there probably has been, in games like Star Citizen or No Man's Sky. Obviously, I assume a lot of the planets, the terrain, and actually, no, not even the animals, because they talk later about how they designed the animals. I think the terrain is almost definitely procedurally generated. There's no way they're going around handcrafting every mountain, every hill, every rock, and placing every tree. That must be procedurally generated. But it sounds like the points of interest that you go to, like in Fallout 3, like in Skyrim, are things where people have thought about it. People have been like, okay, like this one, this is an abandoned mine. Okay, what would it look like? What materials would these buildings have on them? We'd have mining equipment scattered around, but we want it to be in places that make sense. And that's like quite huge. When you play No Man's Sky, you very quickly start realizing every settlement looks the exact same. Every base looks the same. It's the same parts just put together in slightly different orders. And you look at something like Star Citizen, all the planets look basically the same. The cities are absolutely huge, but other than a handful of buildings, they're all just, empty. They're husks. It's just shallow. And this looks a lot more like they've spent an insane amount of time. They've created these procedural worlds, I assume, and then they've fleshed them out using artists, using writers, using like level designers to make stuff that feels a bit more like a real place. And then we've got the combat. So the combat was something that I think when they showed off the showcase for this last time, lots of people criticized. And, I kind of felt a bit like, well, it's like Skyrim and Fallout 3. The combat's crap, but what you're going to do, it's Bethesda. And this, I would still say, the combat's not like, oh my god, it's the best thing ever. We're still not talking like Call of Duty gunplay kind of thing. But it looks so much better than it did before. And a big part of that is the amount of movement in it. Like how fast the characters are moving, how they're using cover. It just looks so much more interesting than it did before. Like, when they're shooting, you've still got the whole thing of enemies having armor bars and health bars, because I'm guessing they want you to have lots of different guns that you can upgrade and abilities and stuff like that. But just the way they're like moving around, like using cover, using their jetpack to fly over things. And across the course of the entire presentation, they spend quite a lot of time talking about how, okay, you might want to be like flying over and using a rocket launcher, or you might want to be using a sniper rifle and like carefully taking people out from a long way away before you get there. Or you can just put a load of points into a thing that lets you walk up and punch people in the face and send them flying. Looked absolutely awesome. All of the loot that you're picking up, one thing I really, really like in this, and I wish Call of Duty would take note of this, is the loot is not highlighted in any way until you're looking at it, and then it tells you what it is. It just makes the game world look so much better when you don't have like things glowing or floating or having like weird outlines in it. I wish Call of Duty had an option of turning all of that stuff off. I get it, like there's a competitive advantage to being able to see loot quickly, but like if you're like me and you care much more about the game world being a bit more immersive, I'd much rather be able to turn all that stuff off. That would be absolutely awesome. So yeah, like, and then it goes through here a little bit of like showing you a little bit more about what the menus look like, and it looks really nice. I think people forget how good Skyrim's menus were and how nice they look. So you've got like an inventory thing, and you've got all of these different types of guns, and it's kind of interesting. There's a few different bits there, all the stuff you'd expect, like what type of ammo it's using, the magazine size, the fire rate of it, the range, the accuracy, the mass of it. So obviously you can only carry so much stuff. That's sort of been a normal thing for Bethesda Game Studios RPGs, and attachments. And all of the guns look really, really cool. Like all of the guns have really, really kind of nice like a nice sort of physical look to them. And same sort of thing with gear, and you can see there, you know, different ideas of how much protection it gives you against energy weapons, EM, I don't know what that's going to be, electromagnetic weapons maybe, physical damage, thermal stuff, corrosive, like acid, radiation. So you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to this planet, but it's like heavily irradiated. Maybe there's no atmosphere, no magnetic field protecting it from radiation. So you're going to need something that can shield you from a lot of radiation before you go down there. Or this place is incredibly hot or incredibly cold. Stuff like that. I really like it. I also love the idea that when you're looking through the different food, loads of it's like space food, you know, in easy to use packaging. And then this is on a plate with some cream, some trilobites. Small alien arthropods, sauteed and served with whipped butter. Also whipped butter, not cream. But like the idea that you're just carrying a plate around with you. I think that's funny. But yeah, very, very cool. And then like the companions, like this robot that they keep on, Vasco, they keep talking about. He looks absolutely awesome. Looks like something out of Interstellar. And you can see the size of the ships. And later, I mean, I'll try and skip to it in a bit. Later, they talk about how you can design the ships and put them together. And the ships are like, you've designed them completely. At first, it looked a bit like with the ship design. It was like, oh, okay, there's a couple of basic components and you can't really do much with them. You'll just like choose which cockpit you have and which engine you have and which like weapons you have. And then they started showing how crazy you can get with it. Like they make a ship that looks like Optimus Prime. And it's like, oh my God, that's going to be incredible. And look at this, you know, it's just landed on the planet and you can go over to it. It's huge and towering above you. It's got all different effects, you know, steam or smoke coming off it. It just looks absolutely amazing. And like you just walk into it and you'll be able to like see, you know, this is where your crew are. This is where your crew live. This is where they're hanging out. And you'll be able to go talk to them and stuff. Just looks absolutely stunning. It'll be interesting to see things like when you land somewhere. I don't think like you actually fly down to the surface. I don't think it's like No Man's Sky where you like literally have to physically land. I think it's much more you fly through space and then when you get to the atmosphere of a planet, you click where you want to land and it will just be there. So it finds a place where your ship can, where there's space for your ship to land. It looks like that's how it works. I don't think there's any manual landing or takeoff or anything like that in it. Because otherwise you'd end up with the whole No Man's Sky problem of like these giant ships bouncing around in weird, awkward ways or landing on the side of a mountain where it's like it doesn't quite line up properly and it has to clip through something. I think they've avoided that by just making it so you just click where you're going to land. I'm pretty sure. But that robot looks so cool. The art style is very, very cool. And yeah, the CNC there. So when you take off, there's like an animation of your ship taking off. And it is your ship. It's not like a pre-rendered cutscene. It's very much you get to see your ship taking off, which will be interesting with stuff like the Optimus Prime ship, seeing that like flying off. But yeah, I don't know. Looks really cool. And then, yeah, you can see like, so you create these ships and you're creating the layout of it, everything. You're creating what modules go into it, what different environments you want. It talks about there being different manufacturers. So you have like, you know, different aesthetic depending on which manufacturer you're using for different components. And then when you go on, it's like being in a Normandy in Mass Effect. You can wander around in your ship. You can see your crew living, doing work and stuff like that. Like, that's amazing. This like blows my mind. This is where they're talking about that sort of having that analog touch. And you know, like even though it's user generated stuff, and I think someone was saying in chat earlier, like with things like Fallout 4, the user generated stuff wasn't that good, and it was like you had to be really careful to place every little thing. Like if you wanted this scene we're looking at here on the screen, it's like a kitchen area, and there's like a pan on the stove, there's like a hand soap bit, there's a couple of post-it notes. If this was Fallout 4, you would have had to place each of those individually. You would have had to create this little diorama. I get the impression this is much more like, no, you're putting like, this is a galley module, you put the galley module in, it will look like a used galley. It will look like something that makes sense, something that's actually been created by an artist, rather than you placing every little thing. At no point did they show you having to place every tiny little thing. It's much more, you do the bigger picture, and then it's as if your crew actually live here. Like, this is a real used thing, which just seems absolutely amazing. You know, you look around, you can see all of the different bits, you know, like displays reading out stuff. Someone's put a plot plant there. Someone's left a drill on the table. They've got a coffee cup there, the person who's working on this desk. Just, it looks real. There's little bits where, like, paint's chipped off. It just looks like a real place. Like, I don't know. It looks amazing. I'm so excited about this. OMG, it's Convict said, hey, Invader. OMG, it's Convict says, I bet it takes less than a month before someone's made a Millennium Falcon. It'll be less than a day. Assuming you unlock it early on, there will immediately, I imagine the first wave of content for Starfield will be TikToks of people making the Millennium Falcon, Serenity from Firefly, what other ships? Starbug from Red Dwarf, that'll obviously be made straight away. That ship from the Star Wars Outlaws game, like, that looks pretty cool. That'll probably be there at some point. Like any sort of like famous ships that you can think of. It did talk about you can make fighters and stuff as well. So there'll be X-Wings and Y-Wings and the Battlestar Galactica fighters and stuff like that. The Expanse ship, what's the Expanse ship called? I can't remember what that thing's called. The Sarakia? It's something to do with that Spanish book. I can't even remember the name of that now. Don Quixote. It's something to do with Don Quixote, isn't it? It's the name of his horse or something like that. But yeah, all of those ships, I imagine, will be built immediately. Pelicans, like a few of the ships did look quite like Pelicans from Halo. I think there'll be a lot of people making stuff like that. Hey, JW. So yeah, here you go. You can see a little bit more they're showing on this screen. Like looking at a planet, and it's like you can choose to land anywhere you want. So you can be like, oh, okay, this area is a forest. This area. Someone was saying earlier, like, oh, I wish there were oceans. I think there are oceans. I just don't think they've shown them off very much yet. But anyway, there's it does talk about the water being radioactive, so there is water. But we'll see. And yeah, it talks about the atmosphere. It talks about the gravity. The gravity is different on different planets. So if you land somewhere with half gravity, you'll be able to jump a lot higher. They make a big deal of that, saying like, if you see a base and it's like got an opening at the top, but the gravity's pretty low, you can be like, yeah, I could probably jump that. Like, I could probably make that. It'll be interesting to see what if the gravity is like 0.1 G. Can you just jump and leave the planet? Can you just fly into space? Like, is that a danger? That would be quite funny to see. I'm looking forward to testing the limits of a lot of these things. But there, yeah, you can see that you can land anywhere, or you can choose to land at one of the points of interest, like a civilian outpost or an industrial outpost. Stuff like that. And then it goes out to show, okay, this one solar system, you can see the sun, and then you can see, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 planets, and then the planets, one of them has 1 moon, one of them has 4, a couple of them have 3, one of them has 2. So that's, you know, like all of these different places that you can land, that you can go look for stuff, that you might sort of have some reason to go there, like you're looking for a particular resource and you're heading over there. Or you might just be the sort of player that wants to go and survey these planets, and you're just like, hey, I'm going to go check out every single one of these planets, every moon, and just sort of like record everything, take pictures of everything. Looks absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, when Joe in the chat was saying, did I have planets with crushing gravity? I mean, some of these planets are huge, so you'd assume so. You'd assume that some of them will have insane gravity, that maybe you need some sort of like mech-assisted clothing to let you walk around on it. Or, I mean, the gas giants, I'm assuming you can't land on the gas giants, because that would be weird. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it's working. I'm just... Oh, there we go. There's one of those planets there. Actually comes up on the screen and says... That's even looking at quite a small planet. Oh, I suppose both those are gas giants, so you probably can't land on them. But this one is gravity 2G. So that is twice the average gravity. So I wonder if, like, you can probably carry half as much stuff there because everything's going to weigh twice as much as it normally would. So that's really interesting. And then, yeah, then you can zoom out and see all of the different solar systems. There's like loads of solar systems. And they talked about, you know, it's got a similar thing to No Man's Sky where you can choose where you're going to jump to, but you need an engine that can take you that far. You have a faster than light engine that folds space. They said that that's how they're going to say it. And you need like the right amount of fuel and you need the right engine. So you'll probably start off being stuck in like a local cluster. And then it's like, okay, but once you can do a quest or something to unlock a bigger engine, then that will open up more solar systems for you and stuff like that. Very, very cool. Very cool. What else is on here? Just like, we'll skip through some of the stuff. And you can see, this is another thing that blew my mind, is like, oh yeah, by the way, you can fly around in space and you've got like your ship's cockpit, and obviously you'll have different things like that. Different controls for space, you know, you've got your hull damage, you've got all your different weapons. They talked about the fact that you have, okay, so you've got laser and ballistic and missile weapons, and then you've got your engine, your shield, and your, I assume your grav drive. I don't know what the gravity is going to be for. But like you can choose what to put energy into. So it's like if you need to move quickly, so you're trying to escape something or chase something, you can switch your energy into your engines, maybe take it away from your shields a little bit. Or you can, you know, okay, you're in a dogfight now and you're very heavily armed. put all of your stuff into your weapons and just destroy someone before they have a chance to fight back, or put a load of energy into your shields because you need to protect yourself. That kind of stuff I always really enjoy in space combat, being able to divert stuff, being able to use like interesting tactics or strategies or things like that. You can see there it's got, okay, right trigger's your laser, left trigger's your ballistics, Y is your missiles, left stick is for speed. You can click in left stick to have a boost. It just looks like it's not needlessly complicated, like not overly complicated, but enough to make it so like there'll be stories, there'll be narratives, there'll be something like cool to do there. And then you can see here, like, okay, they've clicked that they want to land at New Atlantis, which is the city that they were showing off. And you can see there, like, it plays an animation of your ship landing on the landing pad. I'm guessing there'll be strict limits on the size of your ships and things like that. But again, handcrafted cities. Like, this is the city you start in, I think they were saying in this. And so the idea, you know, you've got a handcrafted city where there are stories, there are... they talked about the fact that this is a city where people quite like sort of law and order and stuff like that, so it's fairly strict authority. But it's also very lush. People look quite affluent. Just going around little shops and stuff. Oh, it looks so good. Then it talks a little bit about the story that I don't want to get into too much, because obviously some people might be trying to avoid that. And it talks about there being like different groups, and some of them are like space cowboys, some of them are like gangsters, some of them are like big military corporations, like PMC type things. Oh, there you go. You can see a load of water. So yeah, I don't think they focused on the water too much, because the water probably doesn't look that great. It looks very flat there. But there is water. Like, it's not like everywhere is dry. There are seas and rivers and things like that by the looks of it. And crazy plants. It's just like the amount of like variety between different things. I mean, this looks like it could just be something out of Fallout. Suddenly it goes to this like western town. It's like some frontier outpost, and there's people in dusters and cowboy hats, and they've got lever rifles, and it's got like a tavern and stuff. So different from the big sci-fi city. You had like a Mass Effect style city before. Now you've got like a Fallout style city, or like something out of Firefly here. And it's like, it sounds like, you know, if it's anything like other games, Skyrim, Fallout, you can choose different like factions that you want to be a part of. You can probably choose different like guilds and stuff, so you can do work for them. Just amazing. Just absolutely amazing. I don't get how... I know there's been some people... I saw a couple of people on Twitter last night. It's like loads of people being super hyped about this, being like, oh my god, Starfield looks incredible, it looks amazing. And then you always get a couple of people coming in being sort of like, oh, I don't think it looks very good. I think that was a really bad showcase. Like, it was nothing for me. It's like, who are these people? Who are the people who go and see someone excited about something and it's like, you know, something, it's just an entertainment product. It's not something important. And they see someone excited about something, they're like, this person needs to know that I don't actually think it looks good. It's like, why? Being hyped about stuff is fun. This is super exciting. Like, this is a really, really fun thing to, just to, like, get hyped for. And then it shows the character creator. The character creator looks great. It looks a lot better than previous Bethesda character creators. It talks a lot about skills. One really interesting thing was, like, you have different traits. And so it was saying about how, like, oh, you can have the annoying fan, who I think was in Oblivion. You can have, yeah, this guy who's like a joke from Oblivion. But you can have him follow you around, and he will give you gifts, but he'll also be really annoying. And then later on it says, like, you can find ways to get rid of your traits. So if you find your traits are holding you back, like this annoying fan is too annoying, you can just kill him. You can just be like, okay, you're not going to get any gifts anymore, but also he's not going to be a problem anymore because he's dead. Or one of the other traits is you have parents that are still alive, and you can go see your parents and have meetings with them and stuff like that. Or there's one where you have like more health or something, or you're better at combat, but you're constantly chased down by mercenaries. And, you know, I assume it'll be something like, if you want to pay off your own bounty, then you will be able to like stop that from happening. But just wherever you go, there's going to be a chance that there's going to be a load of bounty hunters are going to come after you. Just really cool, like interesting, innovative ideas, things that I haven't really seen in other games. I'm just really excited. Yeah, it shows the idea that you could kill your adoring fan. What else is on there? Oh, it shows skills. One thing I really liked about the skills is that when you're doing the skills, you're not just leveling them up by gaining XP and then choosing where to put the skill points in. You level them up by completing challenges. So it says here, like intimidation, you've got the basic version of intimidation. You can force a target NPC at or below your level to flee. But to unlock rank 2, you need to successfully intimidate 5 different people, that will unlock rank 2, and that means that you can intimidate people who are higher levels than you, which is really cool. So it's not like the old Morrowind way of doing it, where it's just you do the thing over and over again necessarily, because the challenges could obviously be different. But it's also not the idea that you just that one for healing, you just recover from 5 infections and you do it. But it's also not just you get whatever XP, Skyrim was really bad for this, where you could do stuff like you just made iron daggers. You just made 1 million iron daggers that were really cheap to make, and you could sell them for more than it cost to buy the materials. So you could just make an infinite number of iron daggers, then use that experience to buy anything else. Like, you don't have that kind of thing. Instead, it's much more like, hey, the things you do will unlock better. You'll get better at it, which makes more sense, and I think is a bit more fun, a bit more interesting having to do these challenges. And it shows the combat a lot more, like different styles of combat here. So like one person, they seem to really like showing off these jetpacks where they fly around. This guy just goes up and punches people. And one thing that's nice here is it's not always the same punching animation. There's like a punch to, like, he jabs him in the shoulder there, and there's like an uppercut type thing or a gut punch that sends people flying. Yeah, just like a lot of fun to be able to do stuff like that. There's some cool like stealth stuff here where it's like, running around and pickpocketing and assassinating people like that. Different types of guns, different types of energy weapons and stuff like that, explosives, and then also these weird like mag guns that fire 1 million bullets, sniper rifles, like I said. So many different things. I know I'm just ranting about this and how good it is, but like, I was blown away by all of this. So excited for this. And then it talks about the ship. So you can see here like how different this ship is from some of the other ones we've seen. And it looks like maybe it's got massive fuel tanks on the side, so maybe this one will be able to travel further, or maybe it's cargo for transporting liquids and stuff. You can make a cargo freighter. You can have lots of different ships, so you don't just need to have one ship. So you'll be able to have like, okay, you're going to get a fighter. You can build up a fighter or buy a ship. You don't even have to design them if you don't want. So then when you're doing like a bounty hunter mission, you can just hop in your fighter and get there quickly, chase them down, do it. And then sometimes you want to do like a transport mission where you're going to make some money by transporting something or smuggling something into a different system. So you're going to build something that's got loads of cargo space. Maybe you're going to do something where you need a load of crew. So you're going to have one with a load of crew quarters on it. Stuff like this, like you choose different weapons. Look at how different these ships are. And look how different the cockpits are. Like, it's just amazing. It's just incredible. Like, really kind of taking the best stuff from so many other science fiction games, and then on top of that doing things that I haven't really ever seen another game do before. I can't remember another game where you design your ship to this kind of level of detail, and then you see it in the game world. You can wander around inside it, you can land it on different planets, you can take it into space and fight with it. Like, the editor is so unbelievably detailed. Like, here there's a little bit of video, and it shows the different stats for your ship. And you can see things like, okay, this shows how much, I don't know what WO and W1 is, but you can see how powerful the engine is, how powerful the shield is, how powerful the GRV is. I still don't really know what that is. Maybe that's the thing that folds space, the gravity drive or something. And then it looks like there's a reactor, and it says like, okay, you've got 30 possible equip power and you're up to 27. So it's like how much stuff you can put on top of this, like how much stuff you can add to it, is governed by how powerful your engine is, which kind of makes sense. And you can see things on the designer where it's like, okay, different components of your ship actually matter. So there is a door that is super high up there. So is that a door that's going to be a way you can get into your ship? And it looks like, there's all of these struts. Is that automatic that these struts come up to make the ship look like it would work a little bit better? You've got the landing ramp down there. You've got a bit there that shows like, okay, this is the direction of thrust, this is where the engines are. Like, will you be able to do stuff where, like, one of those ships where it's a big orb and then all the engines are on the bottom? Like, I've got no idea. No idea. Will it change the animations that you're doing for this? No idea. Absolutely amazing. And then, like, they do all of that, and then you can see it, and you can see the scale. There's a little person sitting at the bottom of the screen. It's like, okay, this massive ship you've designed, now you can explore it and see it in full scale. That's one of the cool things in Star Citizen. You buy a ship, and when you get to wander around, see it in a hangar or see it on a planet, it's like, oh, this is actually huge. Like, this is actually massive. Just amazing. And obviously you get to choose the paint job. That's the one that I thought looked a bit like a Pelican. It looks like the cockpit and stuff, and the color scheme looks a bit like a Pelican from Halo. And having like the vertical thrusters. Not all of those ships seem to have vertical thrusters. How do they take off? Who knows? How are they going to do it? That looks like the one from Aliens, doesn't it? That looks like the lander from Aliens. I think there's quite a lot of things like that where they've put stuff in his trailer and have been like, hey, you wanted to know if you can make this? Well, here you go. Here's something that looks a bit like that. And the ships just all look so different, like so unbelievably different. There's really like a lot of variation of like, you know, okay, you've got an idea of what you want to make. Let's see if we can help you do it. Let's see if we can make components that make sense for that kind of ship. Like that one's got tons of like vertical thrusters there, which looks really cool. And here it shows all of the different components that are making up that ship. And just like, you can kind of see the docking points and how you could start connecting to it. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you can see like fuel tanks, the grav drives. That must be what the GRV thing stands for. The different weapons, the cockpit, the bay, the landing gear, the reactor. And I don't know, maybe it'll be like, you have to have some kind of landing gear. You have to have some kind of shield. In order for it to like say it's okay and let you build it. I assume that it must work like that. You can say how many crew you can have. So this is a 2-person cruise ship. It's just got a cockpit. Obviously you could have some big ships where you got like 10 people in it or something like that. Just so much detail, so much like the way it all snaps together looks super satisfying. I can't see anything where it's talking about rotating things and things like that. Like I'm curious to see where the limits are for all of these different features. Like where is the stuff where you're like, okay, this is the most you can do. This is like the bits where it gets stuck. You know, can you put all of your engines at the front of the ship? Like a Naboo starfighter type thing. I don't know. Or does it have to go at the back? And yeah, it talked about different things that you can put inside. Like, do you want cargo space? Do you want a weapons bay? Do you want like crew bits? And then there's someone, yeah, here where they say like, okay, well, I wanted to make a ship that looked like a platypus, and you can. Like, it's a kind of goofy. It looks more like an ant to me, but it looks pretty cool. And then there's the thing that really kind of blew my mind is the next one. Come on. I mean, that one looks crazy that you can just see on someone's screen where they've got like loads of components put into like a big rectangle with a space in the middle. You can make some crazy designs on here. And then, yeah, here we go. Here's the Optimus Prime ship, where they say it's a mech, but it's the colors of Optimus Prime. It's very, very, very clearly an Optimus Prime ship. And it's like, you look at that and think, oh my God. Like, well, before, I was talking to someone on Twitter about this last night. When they were showing all of this shipbuilder, I was trying to work out, could you build something like Serenity from Firefly? Because Serenity's got a very specific profile. The cockpit is very high up compared to the rest of the ship. You know, it's like on a raised bit. And everything they'd shown so far looked a little bit like, oh, it's all kind of on a flat plane. You can put some stuff on top of other stuff, but basically you're going to be making a flat, normal-looking spaceship. And then they show this off, and it's like, oh, you made a person. You made a big person robot. You made Optimus Prime. It's like, you can just make whatever you want, can't you? You can just really make something, and you can see there it's got the landing thrusters on each foot, like down on the bottom. It's got like weapons where the hands would be. Like, I want to see that in a dogfight. I want to see someone dogfighting that. I want to see what it looks like to, if you're climbing around in that, does that mean that you'd have to be constantly using ladders to get to the different components and stuff? There's a million doors on it. Like, are those doors, can you use all of those different doors? Just looks absolutely amazing. Are all of these windows functional? Like, you can go to each of the windows. You can be like, hey, I'm going to the codpiece window today to look out. It's just like the possibility is mind-blowing for what you're going to be able to do for this. And the way it flies, the fact that this is the takeoff animation, and you can see it's kind of wobbling a bit because it's like this crazy top-heavy thing. I do wonder, like, with these animations, are they just canned animations for what type of landing gear you've got? And it's like, okay, we'll do your ship, and the actual animation will be based on the landing gear, and then it just flies off. Or is there some sort of physics simulation going here? Is this wobbling because it's top-heavy? Like, I've got no idea. But it looks amazing. Absolutely looks amazing. And yeah, you've got all like your companions hanging out on there, which looks really, really cool. Just unbelievable scale and variety and things that I've not seen a game do before. I honestly can't remember the last time there was a game showcase that blew my mind in this way, where I was like, oh, we're looking at something like insanely special. You know, you have showcases where things like a lot of the Sony ones, where it's like you see a game and it's like the new God of War or Spider-Man or, you know, Metal Gear Solid or whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, this looks like a good version of that thing I know. And that's, normally what the Sony showcases are like. It's like, oh, okay, this is that thing that I already know and understand. And it's like a very polished version of that. And then you get showcases where it's like, quirky little things. And it's like, oh, okay, that seems kind of cool. Maybe I'll give that a try. I wouldn't have seen this otherwise. I'm interested. And then you get something like this where it's like everyone knew what to expect going into this. Like everyone knew what Bethesda Game Studios making a space game would kind of be like. And then they just surpass every expectation by such a large degree and make something where I saw on Twitter, on Twitter, I'd say most of the people I follow on Twitter are game developers because I just find it interesting hearing what they have to say. So many people who work on games, from big studios last night were just like, how is this real? Like, how is this a thing that a company has managed to make? Like, this is just so insanely huge. If there was like one element of it where it's like, oh, okay, like this idea of having character traits that you can like find in narrative ways to stop them, that would be kind of an interesting thing. Or if it just had the, hey, you've got all of these different planets you can go to and they've got their own environments and their own gravity and their own sunlight and stuff like that. That would be interesting. Or if you had the, oh, you can like make up your crew and then take them on a spaceship and it's kind of, you choose who you're siding with and what sort of people you bring along with you. That would be interesting. Or if you had the spaceship builder thing, that would be interesting. But having like all of these things in one game that is coming out this year and for it to already look this polished and look this good is just insane. And it's not like nothing about it in terms of the art style looks particularly derivative. Like it definitely looks like its own thing. It's super colorful. It's super like vibrant and interesting. Just amazing. And I'm not saying it, I know it's super long. I've been going for two and a quarter hours, but I just wanted to talk about Starfield for so long. It's not even like, I'm saying like, oh, Starfield is perfect. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, it would be nice if it ran at 60 frames a second on console. They've confirmed yesterday that it's not. It's going to be 30 frames a second on console. Luckily, I'm lucky enough that I'll be able to play it on PC. I'll be able to play it at 60 frames a second. But that would be nice if they could do it. Obviously, like when they're talking to people, the dialogue, the character animation for dialogue still has that Bethesda jank to it. People still look a bit wooden. That doesn't look perfect. Fair enough. But so much of what they're showing off looks incredible. And it's like when I think of the amount of fun I had with Fallout 3 and with Skyrim, and then like now they're doing something in a setting that I absolutely love, and there's so many features that just like I can't wait to delve into. It's like mind-blowing how good this game looks. I genuinely think like this is, there's not going to be I don't think there's many doubts now that this game's going to be good. I can't imagine there's many people who are looking at this being like, oh, after Redfall, like, I wonder if Starfield's going to be any good. It's like they've shown so much gameplay. They've shown off so much of the game. I think everyone can be pretty confident that this is going to be super good. And the question's really going to be like, how does the combat feel and how buggy it is? Like, those are the only things that are really kind of left up in the air. And hopefully they'll be getting some journalists and stuff to play the game, to get some hands-on time with it, and then it'll be good. I was lucky enough to get invited down to London to play Redfall early. I've been messaging the Bethesda reps being like, please let me play Starfield. I really want to do like a hands-on preview of Starfield. I really want to know how this feels to play it myself. Like, what does the space combat feel like? What does the shooting feel like? What's the movement feel like? All of that stuff. Like, I'm just blown away. And it's interesting, like, I think a lot of people were like, saying for 2023, oh, game of the year, it's already wrapped up. It's Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And then other people were like, yeah, game of the year, Diablo 4. That game's absolutely stunning, absolutely incredible game. And other people have been like, Street Fighter 6, the best fighting game of all time, probably. Absolutely amazing. And then other people were like, well, Spider-Man 2's coming out this year. Like, that's obviously going to be the best game of the year. And now it's like, yeah, but Starfield, like, all of those games look like very good versions of things that have come before. This looks like it's going to move, like it's going to be like one of those all-time classics, one of those games like Skyrim was, that just like pushes an entire genre forwards. And as I said, probably ruins a big part of the game industry. Like I suppose Star Citizen and No Man's Sky really are just going to have to lean on the multiplayer thing of like, oh, okay, okay, we're not as good as Starfield, but we're multiplayer, and like that's the thing. Who knows? Anyway, that is me done. Like, this has been a very, very, very long podcast, but hopefully worth it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I just thought, like, I needed to talk about this. I needed to just chat to people about how amazing it is. I'm going to go off. I'm going to have a bit of a break while I record a bit of footage and stuff. And then I'm going to make a video just gushing about Starfield and how incredible the whole thing looks. A little bit more of a confined one, just, try and keep it to 10 minutes or so. But bloody hell, it looks good. And it feels nice. It feels really good to be able to be this hyped about something, to be this excited about a game. I can't remember the last game I was this excited about. Maybe Warzone when it came out. But, that was like 3 years ago now. I feel like even then, I was loving Blackout. I already had Blackout, so I wasn't like that, hyped about it. I just can't remember seeing something like this. Feels to me like the first time we saw Half-Life 2. People who are old enough to remember that first time we saw Half-Life 2 and we saw them like pulling a radiator off a wall and throwing enemies and building barricades and stuff, and it was like, whoa, this is incredible. Or the first time you saw GTA 5 and you saw, jets flying past, or GTA Online, jets flying past apartment buildings and like Los Angeles like rendered in such like incredible beauty and stuff. It's like, it feels like that kind of scale of thing for me. And that's awesome. Like, I'm super excited to be hyped. I've got no time for people who aren't hyped about this. I'm not like, this isn't the sort of thing where I'm like interested in a super good discussion where someone's going to be like, well, actually, I don't think it looks very good. I don't care. You can go away and be miserable. I don't care. Not interested in it, to be honest. I'm just interested in being excited about a game and being happy about a game and looking forward to playing it. So absolutely awesome, especially after had kind of a crap weekend. The first half of the weekend, very, very bad, very negative, felt very bad, mental health very low, like just not in a happy place at the beginning of this weekend. To end the weekend with this was like so uplifting and so good. And then tonight we have the Ubisoft Forward. I'm not going to spend ages speculating about what I want to see at the Ubisoft Forward. I'm sure we'll see Assassin's Creed Mirage. I'm really excited to see more Star Wars Outlaws. I would love to see some Division Heartlands, to see that extraction shooter. I want to see some gameplay of that because I haven't really seen anything. It'd be nice if we found out, maybe they'll like shadow drop X Defiant. That would be cool. Because I felt like that was, other than the network code, it was pretty much ready to go. Would love to see some of that. Would be awesome if we saw some of the Splinter Cell reboot. That would be exciting. The new Avatar game, I want to see some of that. So that would be very cool. I would love to see some more for like, Riders Republic. Maybe they'll show off the skateboarding stuff that's coming next month. Or this month, I don't know, it's sometime soon. The Crew, the next Crew game, I forgot what's it called, the Crew Festival or something. I can't remember what it's called. There's a new Crew game coming out. I like the Crew games. Would love to see more of that. So there's loads of stuff that I'm looking forward to about the Ubisoft Forward. They tend to put on a really exciting show. So tomorrow morning, we'll be doing this all again, but talking about Ubisoft. Probably not for 2 hours that time. Anyway, thank you so much to everyone who's watched all the way through to the end. You are absolutely magnificent. Don't forget to leave a like on the stream if you can. It helps me out a bunch. And I'll probably be streaming some Diablo later today. Like I said, at 4 o'clock, actually, I'm going to be streaming some Formula 1 2023. I'm allowed to stream that. I'm going to be streaming the story mode of Formula 1 2023, Breaking Point. So if you want to see that, make sure that you come back and check that out. So thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.